the sovereign of the desolate sands. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 276, Heart-Piercing. The courtyard where Zhang Yuanzi lived was surrounded on all sides, and there was not often wind on weekdays. But at this moment, the windows on the back of the house were open and the door on the front was broken, so there was convection. Hong Fan walked into the courtyard quietly. The stone steps and the green tiles were all pure white covered with snow, so the only red color was particularly eye-catching. Under the corridor pillar, a person was sitting. His head was lowered, and his face could not be seen. A sword pierced his heart to the hilt and nailed into the wooden pillar, revealing a tortuous metal section. Hong Fan recognized this sword. It was narrow and sharp. It was Zhang Yuanzi's sword, named Lingshu. He did not move rashly, but stayed alert in place and observed the environment carefully. Everything indicated that no one had been active at the scene for a while. There was no sign of any danger, so Hong Fan could no longer stay. He scattered the sand armor and strode forward, kneeling on one knee in front of the corpse, holding his breath, and brushing aside the hanging hair. The man's eyes were closed. The color of his lips was lighter than usual. If not Zhang Yuanzi, then who else could it be? The world was so quiet at this moment that it seemed to be frozen. Hong Fan turned his eyes away as if he had been electrocuted and retracted his hand. His hair swayed stiffly. The blood that flowed from Zhang Yuanzi's heart spread out on the ground dryly, like roots that penetrated deeply into the whiteness of the snow. Hong Fan didn't dare to look at the person anymore, so he had to look at the sword. The sword was horizontal, and near the handle was a clear sword inscription, Ning's Handaomi, Duoking Lingshu. How painful would it be to have metal piercing the heart? Hong Fan instinctively wanted to draw the sword, but the moment before he grasped the hilt, he stopped, could not use the murder weapon. He thought painfully, and had to hold Zhang Yuanzi's hand hanging by his side. It was like holding a piece of ice. The heat was drawn away, and the flow of blood gradually slowed down. The living and the dead seemed to have become a whole, as dead as a painting. Puff, puff. A very slight sound of stepping on snow came from behind Hong Fan. His eyes were bloodshot, and he turned his head suddenly to see a ball of orange looking at him at the gate of the courtyard. It was a cat slave left behind when Bai Jiasi moved away. There were still blood stains on its fur. Come here, Hong Fan called softly. His voice was hoarse, as if it contained rust. Upon hearing the words, the kitten spread its legs and ran over, trembling and sticking to his legs. After a moment, a very weak heat penetrated the pants and imprinted on the skin. Hong Fan finally exhaled the turbid air that had been stuffy in his chest for a long time. He lifted the kitten up and held it tightly in his arms. Meow, the cat also called softly. Still with fear, in the 29th year of Zheng, the Lantern Festival. The sun slowly set in the west, and it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The Hong families left behind people in Zhejiang saw their second young master holding an orange cat coming in from outside the door. This was the first time they saw each other's faces without a smile. It was so cold from the inside out that it was frightening. Soon, people rushed to various places in Zhejiang along the 6th Cross Street. On the day of reunion, there was no one in this Hangwu Academy except for the guards of key facilities. This was not an easy night to find people. The first to arrive were Wu Hongling and Wu Ruai. When the servants of the Hong family found them, the mother and daughter were preparing to go out. This year's Lantern Festival was spent in Chori Mansion, which was originally agreed upon. The bad news came suddenly and it was hard to believe. While walking through the streets and alleys, Wu Ruai's expression was stern, but she was still lucky. Until she saw the ice-sculptured corpse of Zhang Yuanzi, her tears immediately fell. Not long after the moonlight fell, Jian Xian and Master Lu Yun arrived one after another. Wu Hongling, who was trying hard to hold back her grief, came to greet them. The two first checked Zhang Yuanzi's body. Jian Xian's face was ashen, and he sent someone to ask his superiors. Master Lu Yun wanted to say a few words of comfort. But Hong Fan stood woodenly in the corridor, like a solitary tree growing out of the forest, with a face so grim that it was difficult to approach. As for Wu Ruai, he sat on the stone steps with his knees hugged, silently wiping tears. Master Lu Yun had to shut up. After more than an hour, torches were lit in a circle in the yard, illuminating everyone's shadows to their feet. When the sky was as dark as ink, everyone who could come finally arrived. There were 11 people in the 6 teams of Tiki. The first team was all locals and came the most. Most of the others had not returned to Zijing. The last one to come in the highest rank was Commander-in-Chief Gu Taining. The state-owned martial arts academy has 4 main business lines, namely Zhang, Zhu, Si, and Cha, which are each in charge of 4 commanders below the commander. Among them, Zhang is intelligence, Zhu is the research of martial arts techniques and elixirs, Si is law enforcement, and Cha is the management of sects. As the general director of Tiki, Jian Xian is responsible for the Tiki of a state. Gu Taining, a rank 4th rank official, was Jian Xian's direct superior and was in charge of all the armed forces in the prefecture, including the Hunren realm Tiki, Guantong realm Lishi, and Jishi Yaoxia. As soon as he arrived, he naturally took over the command. First, several Tiki outside the second team were sent out to control several households around Chori prefecture. Then, accompanied by Jian Xian and Wu Hongling, Gu Taining carefully inspected the scene, going back and forth between indoors and outdoors several times. Unfortunately, they didn't see much because they were specialized in their fields. During the interval, Hong Fan, who had been silent for a long time, finally responded. He walked out from the shadows, past Jian Xian, and went straight to Gu Taining. Commander-in-Chief, may I ask if the Admiral knows about today's incident? Hong Fan bowed and asked. Admiral Su already knows, Gu Taining replied. Then won't the Admiral come? Hong Fan asked again. Maybe he is busy with important matters. Gu was tongue-tied and perfunctory at first. Hearing this, Hong Fan took another half-step closer. Why are you so busy on the Lantern Festival? He lowered his voice, but did not compromise. This way of asking questions would be considered presumptuous under normal circumstances. But the commander-in-chief saw the anger and sorrow on his subordinate's face and could not argue with him. Before I came, I went to see the Admiral. Gu Taining hesitated, glanced around, and waited for Jian Xian to walk away before replying in a whisper. The Admiral was surprised to hear that a T cavalry had died, and asked me first if it was you. When I said it wasn't you, he was relieved, but he was still thinking deeply. Sitting in that position, it is inevitable to worry more about things outside the matter. Hong Fan was silent. Thank you for telling me, sir. He finally had nothing to say. Hong Fan, I know how you feel. Seeing this, Gu Taining persuaded him gently. This happened during the New Year's Day, and in Zijing City, which is appalling. I can guarantee that the State Department will investigate it to the end and will not tolerate it. Otherwise, how can I stand as the head of the Martial Academy? He deliberately raised his voice for these 2 sentences so that everyone present could hear. Gu Taining's determination was not fake. So Hong Fan could only nod. Just after the hour of 9 o'clock in the evening, the Zijing City judge arrived with a first wave of detectives. They blocked the side garden and the courtyard where the incident occurred, and arranged guards. Except for the victim's body, they did not rush to search the site too carefully. After all, it was dark at night, and there was snow outside. Working overnight might go wrong. Inside Chowri Mansion, people were silent and bleak. Outside Chowri Mansion, it was still the Lantern Festival. Around midnight, fireworks were set off in Zijing City, blooming in large clusters on the sky. The colorful lights illuminated the night of Yao. It also illuminated the light snow covered by Zanyuanzi. Chapter 277 Encirclement and Killing. It was past midnight and everyone had already dispersed. Hong Fan sat in front of the window, watching the moon slowly fall below the roof. The night sky became a solidified asphalt shell. The stars were connected in a line, as if the cracks in the shell revealed some light from the outer world. Hong Fan had no idea how long he had been sitting there. Until the sound of the clappers at the 4th watch came from outside the mansion. Even at midnight on a festive day, the night watchmen still had to walk the streets. As sleepless people, they could not help but sympathize with each other. The sound of the clappers faded away. Hong Fan's thoughts, which had been gathered together, loosened a little and became clear again. The first thing that came to him was grief, which was like a heavy hammer hitting his head when he saw the body of Zanyuanzi. The buzzing dizziness left behind was not diluted until Wu Rui, Gu Taining and others left. After sadness, there was anger again. Hong Fan was full of confidence when he returned to Zijing. The business was on the right track and his martial arts were progressing smoothly. The personal network of relationships was gradually expanded, and the foundation of the Jinhei Hong family was slowly consolidated. Everything in the new year should have a new look. But Zanyuanzi's death, as a fact, was as real and hard as iron, and it hit Hong Fan in the face when he was caught off guard. The unchangeable life and death stood in front of him like a high wall, making everything look small. The feeling of powerlessness piled up like firewood, burning the fire of anger. At this moment, Hong Fan wanted to cry like Wu Ruai, and try his best to get rid of the extra emotions. But he couldn't shed a single tear. Under sadness is anger, and under anger is powerlessness. Under powerlessness, what is it? Hong Fan couldn't suppress the heat all over his body, and he stood up and took off his outer robe. On his arms, the hairs stood up like a thorn. In an instant, he understood the emotions hidden deep in his bones. Fear. Hong Fan was able to think instantly. Unfortunately, rationality still brought frustration. Who planned it? What is the purpose? Why at this time? Still sitting there. The fruitless thinking made Hong Fan numb. Until there was a sound of people in the front yard. Is it the investigators who are here? Hong Fan thought, and when he looked up, he found that the starry night had faded. But he didn't know when. It was dawn. The 16th day of the first lunar month was a degree warmer than the day before. It was almost the time when the snow was about to melt. Hong Fan was still wearing the same clothes that Jinhai had worn all the way here. He went to the front yard and saw that the new officers were already busy in the side rooms and the garden. He was led by them. Back in the backyard, Hong Fan drew water from the well and washed his face 3 times until his skin was sore from rubbing it, and finally he felt refreshed and sober. As usual, the things that should be done in the current situation were automatically listed in his mind one by one. Hong Fan went to the kitchen to boil some hot water for use. Then he opened 2 cakes of the top-grade old white tea sent by Zhuang Liren and soaked a large wooden barrel for the reception. Finally, he collected some silver coins and went out to buy a hot breakfast to bring back personally. Wu Ruai and the other arrived soon, followed by Jian Xian. The latter was already old, and he obviously didn't get much sleep last night, and he looked particularly old today. Professional matters should be done by professionals. The city guards divided the police into groups and conducted an extremely detailed investigation. The thickness of the ice layer in the pool, the integrity of the shrub branches, the traces of the roots and corners inside and outside the wall, the forced displacement of the roof tiles. As for the impact of the fight between the 2 sides and the condition of the remains, it goes without saying. When the moon rose, the case had a preliminary result. Mr. Hong, according to our speculation, the case occurred around the 13th day of the first lunar month at the time of Hai, the captain of the police in a dark blue-black clothes said. This man's name is Yang Lechi, and his forehead is full of knife marks carved by time. He is very famous in the Zhejiang industry. There are 5 people here. We tested the thickness of the ice surface of the pool water in the garden. The right third is thinner. He led Hong Fan and others to the side of the garden pavilion. At that time, the victim was painting in the pavilion. The first person hid under the water and suddenly shot a cold arrow through the ice. The last stroke of the painting had a long pause. We estimate that the attack was discovered by the victim in advance. The Xiangxin and Guanying Pian he practiced has this effect. The hidden arrow was dodged and hit the pavilion pillar. Jiang Lechi stepped into the pavilion and pointed to the gap in the pillar. This attack was a sure kill and had great power. The fragments cut off the new branches of the bushes outside the pavilion, but we did not find the remains of these fragments. There are 2 inferences. First, the hidden arrow was shot by freezing water. Second, combined with the turtle breathing and water covering technique required for lurking, this person should be practicing water-based martial arts. This analysis is linked together, and Hong Fan and others nodded after listening. The victim is an experienced T cavalry. He was not panicked after the sudden assassination and retreated to the room immediately. Jiang Lechi looked to the east and spoke again. This is because he is an expert in swordsmanship, but he did not bring a weapon when he was painting. When the murderous intent appeared, the first thing a swordsman would think of is to take out the sword. As they spoke, several people walked back to the eaves. On the side was a window that had been smashed inward. The victim broke into the house and took out the sword. Jiang Lechi lightly jumped into the house. Everyone followed him in. After taking the sword, he turned around and slashed, shattering the 4 ice arrows that were chasing from outside the window, and the flying ice flakes left traces. In the dark, the captain stood under the beam and slashed at the window several times, then pointed at 7 or 8 places around without even looking. Hong Fan used his eyesight to see that these places were indeed damaged by the impact. But the real murderous intent is not outside, it's here. Jiang Lechi suddenly raised his hand and pointed upwards. Hong Fan's heart was clenched. The beam of the house happened to be right above the place where the captain stood. One person had been lying in ambush on the beam, and when the victim was dealing with the ice arrow, he attacked silently. Zhang Leqi spoke in a low voice, as if he had witnessed the scene himself. The palm strike was from above, with great force and power. The victim jumped back urgently, and although he managed to receive the palm strike with his palm, he still couldn't bear it, and was knocked back and crashed out of the main wall of the wing room. By the way, there is a half footprint left by the assassin on the main beam, and the location of the palm strike is 7.5 feet above the 9th brick from the window, he added. How do you determine the location of the palm strike? Wu Hongling was confused. Wu said, I can go get a ladder and look at the distribution of the dust on the horizontal and vertical beams. Zhang Leqi glanced at her and replied. Not only can we know the location of the palm strike, but we can also know that the palm wind is shifted from west to east. The second assassin's palm power is higher than that of the victim. The contusion on the left wrist of the latter's body can also confirm this. Wu Hongling nodded and said no more. Anyway, this palm sent the victim flying, smashing the door and falling out. Seeing no one asking questions, Zhang Leqi passed by 2 broken doors half hanging on the door hinges and walked deep into the courtyard. Then there was the third person. This person stood here, with a large physique. When he exerted force, he stepped on the 2 grasses between the bricks and broke them completely. Seeing the target coming out, he moved forward to meet it, and should have slashed it horizontally with something like a big knife. This knife was barely blocked, but it cut off the Lingshu sword that was cushioning it, and left a pressure mark on the victim's body. Chapter 278. The best time. After that, the victim bumped into the pillar and fell to the position where Master Hong first saw him. The captain walked back to the corridor and pointed to the pillar. At this time, the body had been removed for inspection, and only the sword wound stained with the blood of the heart remained on the wood. At this time, the victim had suffered serious internal injuries. The sword fell out of his hand, and he was unable to resist. Zhang Leqi's voice darkened. The fine sand on the stone bricks exposed after sweeping the snow trembled. The captain heard heavy and slow breathing and looked at Hong Fan. The wind and sand settled down immediately. The fourth person came over at this time. Zhang Leqi calmed down and continued. This man came to finish off the victim. He picked up the victim's broken sword and stabbed it along the upper edge of the 5th rib on the left side. This is the apex of the heart, where large blood vessels enter and exit. He chose this place to attack, so this 4th assassin must have killed many people, and he was able to use the broken sword to pierce the heart and then the wooden pillar, so he must have practiced sword or gun. The 4 people who attacked must be masters in the Hunran realm. To be honest, they are not inferior to the victim in one-on-one combat, he concluded. There was silence in the courtyard for a moment. Captain Zhang, can you deduce the identity of the person who attacked? Jian Xian asked. There are not enough clues. Zhang Leqi shook his head. Since this stab, no one has finished off the knife. The purpose of the murder is very clear, but the whole process is clean and neat, without any torture, and it doesn't seem like there is a deep hatred, and the victim is a peaceful person, so we can't find a possible motive for the crime for the time being. He hesitated for a moment and added. There may be a 5th assassin in this assassination. We found 2 pieces of blue tiles that were displaced by the force on the ridge of the highest room in the south of the courtyard. There may be a 5th person standing there, overlooking the whole scene. There are civilians all around Chari Mansion, and there is no need to spread the news of the assassination by a warrior. Perhaps this person's martial arts is higher than the other 4, and he is the last insurance for the assassination plan. The person behind the scenes planned this, which can be said to be very deliberate. After going over the case with everyone, Zhang Leqi led a few people to the next door. In a small room in the side wing, 4 thick candles were lit, and the dragon-patterned incense burner on the desk was filled with incense that was about to burn out. There were ashes left from burning paper money on the ground. The weather was still cold, and vinegar was steamed in the room to suppress the odor. These are the necessary procedures for the coroner to perform an autopsy. Zhan Yuanzi was lying on the long table in the middle, and he had put on his clothes again. Mr. Hong, today we will divide into 3 groups to investigate the situation independently. All information will be recorded in pictures and texts, so there will be no omissions. The side garden and the small courtyard where the crime occurred will have to be sealed off for a while for future use, but Mr. Zhan's body can be returned to you. After saying this, Zhang Leqi added my condolences and closed the door and went out. There was no wind in the room, and the atmosphere was heavy and stagnant. No one spoke for a while. Hong Fan took 2 steps forward and lifted Zhan Yuanzi's collar to cover the slightly exposed knife wound. The Zhan family is in Zhan County, 70 miles southeast of Zhejiang City, adjacent to Yao River, and is a local big family. Wu Hongling turned away, took a deep breath, and said. He has not been in contact with his family for a long time, Hong Fan replied suddenly. No matter what, Yuanzi's relatives are still there, and we can't hold a funeral privately, Wu Hongling insisted. We must first send the person and the news to the Zhan family. Hong Fan lowered his eyes and remained silent. After a moment, he hesitated again. The Lantern Festival has just passed. The coffin. Don't worry about the coffin, Jian Xian answered immediately. The State Department has it prepared all year round. Hong Fan glanced at him. That's fine. I'll hire a cart to pick it up tomorrow morning. Wu Hongling finalized the matter at one stroke. Then tonight, I'll stay here tonight, Hong Fan replied immediately, and took 3 new incense sticks from the table. He flicked his fingers lightly, lit them with fire, and then put them into the incense burner. Mother, Wu Ruiyi heard this and also looked at Wu Hongling. If you want to stay, stay, the latter replied softly. It was said that we would get together during the Lantern Festival, but we didn't get together. After today, there will be no chance to get together again. Wu Hongling's eyes were red as she spoke. I'll go first. She threw away half of the sentence, half raised her head, and went out first. At the same time, in the Su mansion in Zhejiang, Su Pifang sat in the room, reading the thin letter in his hand over and over again. On the 18th day of the first lunar month, Uncle Chengnan will lead you to the dock. Be sure to arrive before midnight. I am going far away this time, and I don't know when I will return. If you have any questions. The letter was not signed, but the soft and sharp handwriting and the commanding tone showed that it was left by Aos Hickson. He was confused. The new year had just passed, and the business partnership with the Jiang family was just getting on track. He didn't even say what happened, and suddenly wanted to leave Zhejiang by himself. From the wording of the letter, it was clear that there was some farewell. Su Pifang thought about it, reading the letter over and over again, and his heart was gradually angry. At this time, there were brisk footsteps coming from the yard. There was a squeak. Yanran, wearing a green cotton skirt, pushed open the door, holding the newly stewed sweet soup, and when she looked up, she saw her young master burning a piece of thin paper on the candlelight. Young master, she asked. I practiced a few words, but they were too bad, and I was upset when I saw them, Su Pifang replied. Yanran nodded when she heard that, and glanced at the corner of the table, and saw that the brush was not wet, and there was no ink in the inkstone. Spring comes and you need to nourish yourself. This is the jade hibiscus soup I made. Young master, try it. She put down the soup and deliberately changed the subject. Not bad, just the right saltiness. Su Pifang tasted a spoonful and praised casually. It's already the Lantern Festival. I've been in the clan for so long. Is there anything that people say about me outside? He asked casually again. Young master, since you asked this question, how can there be a bad one? Yanran smiled. In all these years in the clan, no one except you has made it to the top 3 lists. Now when everyone hears the word young master, the first person they think of is not the eldest young master, but you. Su Pifang heard this and showed a light-hearted expression. What about you? He asked his personal maid with concern. Okay, how can it be bad? Yanran replied without thinking. I used to have to look at everyone's face, but now even the maids in the main room have to look at my face, she said with pride. Since being sent to the mansion by her family, there has never been a better time for Yanran. After hearing this, Su Pifang's panicked and trembling heart suddenly settled down. He put down the spoon, picked up the bowl, and drank it all in one gulp. The hot soup went along the esophagus and warmed the stomach and intestines. After finishing the empty bowl, Su Pifang leaned back in his chair. The sight cast on the beam seemed to travel through time and saw the time when the 3 new lists were released a few months ago. At that time, he stood in the middle of the highest window of the Whale Rider, looking around. The eyes and cheers of the whole world were coming to him. The door creaked. When he came to his senses, Yanran had left. Yes, there will never be a better time, Su Pifang sighed with emotion. He opened his collar and reached out to grasp the golden chain around his neck. Hold it tightly and break it. Chapter 279, Death. The next day was the 17th day of the first lunar month. The sun shone through the windows as usual. Hong Fan had not slept for the 2nd night in a row. At dawn, He lit the only 3 remaining sandalwood sticks and began to sort out the relics in the side courtyard with Wu Ruai. Zhan Yuanzi left a lot of things, filling up 2 empty rooms, and 99% of them were paintings. The broken sword Lingshu is the most important one, and was temporarily kept as evidence by the Judicial Inspection Department. Hong Fan and his companions just moved the paintings. They carefully unfolded them, glanced at them, and then rolled them up and packed them. There were a total of 421 paintings. Hong Fan kept only 1 painting privately. The painting was made last year during the Mid-Autumn Festival. It was a large painting 5 feet wide, with the theme of the moon and people during the Mid-Autumn Festival. The lake under the moon, the pavilion by the lake, and the people in the pavilion were all painted, except for a full moon. The full moon is only 1 month apart, and the Mid-Autumn moon is only 1 year apart. But people are separated forever. Wu Hongling arrived at a little after 8 o'clock, bringing soy milk buns, an amu coffin, and 3 carriages. The carriages were all pulled by black horses. Without firecrackers to lead the way, the convoy set off in silence. Those carrying the coffin were in front, and those carrying the paintings were behind. Hong Fan and Wu Ruai walked beside them. 2/4 of an hour later, the team left Chaoyuan Gate in the east of Zhaijing City. Another hour later, they passed the first populated area. The dusk between winter and spring weighed heavily on the low-rise villages. Suddenly, Hong Fan felt that he was traveling through the deep seabed, and the lofty sky was the untouchable sea surface. He turned back and took another look at Zhan Yuanzi's coffin, feeling suffocated as if drowning. The east wind after the new year blew in his face. Hong Fan shuddered. In his 2 lives, this was the coldest wind he had ever felt. The team did not stop at noon, and had a random lunch of dry food. 5 hours after the start, the horses were extremely tired, but Hong Fan generously added money, and the car owner endured the pain and continued on his way. The convoy entered Zhan County at this time. Wu Hongling did not know the specific address. Fortunately, the county town was not big, and they found their place easily by asking for the eldest son of the Zhan family, who works as a tikkie in Zhaijing. The Zhan's house was not small, and there were people at home, with a gate open. The person who received him was Zhan Yuanzi's younger brother Zhan Huzi. He was about 30 years old, with a mustache, and only knew that his brother went to Zhaijing to work as a tikkie, but he didn't recognize Jinhei Hongfen. Upon hearing the bad news suddenly, Zhan Huzi was surprised at first, then lowered his eyes and remained silent for a long time. After digesting it for a while, he did not report it immediately, but stopped the servants from crying too timely, and moved things with Hongfen and others. The front yard of the Zhan's house was spacious, with plum trees on both sides. The flowers were white and the fragrance was faint. After going back and forth several times, more people gathered outside the house. Their pointing and gossip finally reached the back. 2 old men in their 60s with white hair came out. It was obvious that they were Zhan Yuanzi's parents. His father was walking with a cane, and it was quite inconvenient for him to walk. His face was solemn, and he was wearing a black satin cotton coat. The wrinkles between his eyebrows were very deep, like the gullies washed out by heavy rain on the hard ground over the years. In contrast, his mother's steps were vigorous. They didn't know that their eldest son had died. Father Zhan came to the front yard, glanced at the outsiders in the yard, and called the middle-aged housekeeper. "Whose stuff?" he asked with full energy. "It's the painting sent back by the master." The housekeeper was stunned for a moment, lowered his head and replied. Hearing this, Mother Zhan's mouth curled slightly. Since the painting has been sent back, the person will naturally come back to live. She tried to hide her happy expression and secretly glanced at her husband. Father Zhan looked angry and disgusted. "Some waste paper, which can't be sold for a few taels of silver, why bring it back?" he said loudly with a sense of triumph. "He is in Zhaijing, and there has been no news for several years. You want to send something back, but don't you send someone to inform first? Zhaijing is Zhaijing, Zhan County is Zhan County, who knows which one he is?" At this time, Zhan Huzi happened to come in from outside holding a wooden box. When Zhan's father saw his youngest son, he stopped mocking and just raised his head. In a short time, the wrinkles on his face seemed to have faded a lot. Hong Fan and Wu Hongling were also in the yard. This time they came to report the death. However, they looked at each other and couldn't speak, as if they had lost the ability to speak all of a sudden. "Who are you two?" The one asking the question was Zhan Yuanzi's mother. "We are Brother Zhan's teammates in the tikkie, and this is the CI of our team." Hong Fan forced a smile and replied. "Oh, That's really an honored guest. Zon's mother wiped her hands on the hem of her clothes. Her heart was occupied by other emotions, and she couldn't immediately see the reluctance of the faces of the few people. But Zon's father noticed something a little bit discordant. The paintings on the 2 carts had all been moved in. Why are there so many people outside? He didn't know why he changed the subject, but just muttered unhappily. What's so exciting to see? Zanhuzi stood aside, and finally walked out of the door in dejection. A moment later, the car parked outside the yard, pulling the coffin, was led in. The 2 old people immediately understood what had happened. All the ease and happiness in the courtyard were destroyed at this moment. Zan's mother opened her eyes blankly and looked at Wu Hongling. When her mother staggered, Zanhuzi rushed up to support her. How could it be? Daling is a Tiki, in the Hunran realm? The old lady asked, trying to refuse to believe it. Hong Fan only blurted out one word and choked. Speaking at this time was more bitter than taking medicine. Is this your brother's coffin? Zan's father ignored the strangers and turned his face to ask Zanhuzi. He tried his best to hold the crutches, shaking, but standing firm. Zanhuzi was forced to nod. Ah, did I say that before? I expected it. He chuckled and raised his chin, as if he had lost, but also as if he had won. It was probably a miserable victory. Uncle. These paintings are the relics of Brother Zan. He has accumulated 410 military merits, which are converted into 4,100 taels of silver, and they are all returned. Hong Fan finished his words with difficulty and handed over the silver note. Father Zan turned around and looked at Hong Fan seriously for a moment, motioning Zanhuzi to take it. He moved to the side of the coffin and gently stroked it. The people surrounding the courtyard had even squeezed to the door and were still looking inside. The old man suddenly stared over. You have seen the excitement of our father and son for half of our lives, and you still can't see enough. The roar was hoarse and hysterical, and everyone was scared away in an instant. Go and close the door, he said to the housekeeper, panting. The words lost their breath, like an old rotten tree that had been eaten for a long time, and once it encountered heavy rain, it would collapse from the inside. The courtyard door was closed. Father Zan took great effort to calm down and turned to look at Hong Fan. You are Hong Fan, you just joined the team this year, right? He asked in a positive tone. But Hong Fan had not had time to introduce himself to him. Did he get the pen? Father Zan asked again. Hong Fan shook his head. Oh, a boy who is neither here nor there, Father Zan sneered, turned around, and gently patted the coffin. The courtyard fell silent. Only the old lady's intermittent sobbing could be heard. Can the things in your Wuxin pavilion be bought with silver? Father Zan suddenly asked after a long time. Hong Fan gritted his teeth, not knowing how to answer. As a warrior, he could easily hear the sound of tears falling on the ground at this distance. I'm sorry, I said something wrong. Father Zan couldn't wait to answer, choked up the last sentence, and staggered back to the backyard. From beginning to end, no one asked the cause of death. Zanhuzi invited everyone to stay overnight. But Hong Fan insisted on leaving. When they set out on their return journey, only a few people were left in the funeral procession. After a journey of 70 miles, the horses pulling the carts were exhausted. If they did not rest for a night in the county, they would probably die of exhaustion on the road. The owner of the caravan had no complaints. He received 3 times the reward. It was getting dark. Zijing City was northwest of Zan County. The official road was straight. Walking quickly on it, it seemed like chasing the dusk. After all, the dusk could not be caught up. Soon, even the sunset glow disappeared, and the blue-black sky hung down. The world was cold and silent, as if it had fallen into the sea. Hong Fan walked in front, without saying a word. Wu Ruai struggled to light the lantern with a flint. The snow under the cage reflected the firelight, and the farther away was still covered in soft darkness. She quickened her pace, ignoring the goosebumps all over her body, and rushed forward to light the way. The snow began to melt, and the weather was very cold. Even colder was the murderous intent emanating from Hong Fan. Chapter 280, Killing Yigong. On the same day, 2 hours later. South of Zijing City, Yao River, Shuai'an Wharf. In the gorge-shaped river bay, a large sand-type cargo ship was alone. Its bottom is flat, with 3 layers, upper, middle and lower, and 12 feet long. At this time, it is lying in the harbor, like a diligent and honest beast of burden. When the wind and water are favorable, this ship can travel 50 miles every hour. On the river bank, The three members of the AO family stood speechless. Under their gaze, with the moonlight and a small number of braziers, the laborers moved the goods up and down like ants. The quantity is not too much, but the variety is very diverse. 2 or 3 boxes of money, more than a dozen baskets of books and accounts, and more weapons and martial arts elixirs of different specifications. Half a month ago, these things began to be transported out of the city in batches. This is also the reason why Aofuwa took so long to deal with them after receiving the order. They are the most valuable part of the Fubo gang. Why did they come and why are they going now? Unfortunately, everyone in the gang, from the leader to the lackeys, didn't know that the main rudder had become an empty nest. After another half an hour, the porters withdrew. Half a quarter before midnight, everything was ready. The captain of the boat leaned over to Aofuwa. "Boss, everything is ready. We can cast off the ropes and raise the sails at any time." The latter nodded and turned to look at his daughter. Aos Hickson was also looking at him, with a calm expression. "Wait a little longer," Aos Hiji advised. Aofuwa nodded. The waves beat rhythmically on the river bank. Before midnight, Aos Hickson raised her head and only looked at the moon on the river. After midnight, she couldn't help but look outside. Another quarter of an hour passed in this way, and there was still no one. Aofuwa put his hands behind his back indifferently. "We can't wait any longer, let's go." He took a step. "He can't not come," Aos Hickson's stubborn voice came from behind. "Everyone has their own ambitions," Aofuwa stopped and replied. "You two are just here to pay your respects." He saw his daughter clench her fists and tremble all over. "He has come this far thanks to the gang. Without me, he would just be a concubine of the Sioux mansion." Aos Hickson's voice was also shaking, light and sharp, like a string cutting into flesh. "Zio Yuer, there is no Fubo gang anymore," Aos Hiji sighed. "We moved the tiki, and in a few days, we might all be on the evil list and become rats crossing the street. They may not be able to find out," Aos Hickson screamed in a very low voice. "No," it was Aofuwa who interrupted her. "They will definitely find out," he turned around and said in a firm tone. Aos Hickson did not dare to refute his words. "Dad, maybe something delayed him," she had to beg. "I'm going to the Sioux mansion to find him now. It will take at most half an hour. He never dares to disobey me." Then she was slapped in the face. The crisp sound of the snap spread far in the silence, even floating to the other side of the Yao River with the wind. Aos Hickson's tangled face relaxed, and her fixed eyes became absent-minded. "You think too highly of yourself," she heard her father say so. As for the cold gaze that was looking down at her, it didn't seem like he was looking at his daughter, but at the price that could be sacrificed for something greater. Following his father and brother, Aos Hickson got on the boat without saying a word. The sail was raised. The boat left the shore. Aos Hickson stood at the stern, and in the moonlight, she glanced at Zijing City from afar for the last time. At this moment, she loved her fiancé more than ever before, so much so that she firmly believed that something had delayed his steps tonight. 5 days later, it was the 22nd day of the first lunar month. The temperature in Zijing City hovered around freezing. A small part of the snow had melted away, and the remaining snow was trampled by passers-by and turned into a pool of filth. It was not the end of the first lunar month, and Aunt Liu and the others should have just left Jinhei not long ago. However, Hong Pan and his men returned yesterday on horseback. They were shocked to hear about Zhan Yuanzi's situation and hurriedly hired a few new servants for their nephew to set up the Chaori mansion. Just like the previous few days, Hong Fan left at 6 p.m., 10:30 a.m. At his walking speed, he could just arrive at the Zijing City judge's office during the lunch break. Today, Zhang Lechi took the initiative to wait for him outside the door. "Mr. Hong, I think you should be here soon," he said. His expression was not as solemn as the previous few days. The two of them sat down in the wine shop in the next alley and ordered a few home-cooked dishes. The food came up quickly. "Captain Zhang, is there any progress in the case?" Hong Fan started with his question as usual. Zhang Lechi shook his head first, and when he saw the other party side, he hurriedly said, "But things may have taken a big turn. Please teach me, Captain." Hong Fan raised his eyes. "I just found out this morning that Lord Zanyu was on duty in Qinghui City, which is more than 100 miles north of Zijing," Zhang Lechi said in a low voice. Azu Ancha was in the capital back then, and he was an old friend of Lord Zanyu. The case of Chaori Prefecture was already of great concern to the ministry, and Gukai Anshi of your department was pressing for a case. So after hearing the news, Zuacher decided to personally invite Lord Zanyi. Hong Fan was confused. Who is this Lord Zanyi? He asked, but he didn't have much hope in his heart. Zan Yuanzi's body has been sent back, and he may be buried in a few days. The crime scene in Chori Prefecture has been destroyed after the snow melted. And there is no witness in this case. He is the judge of the Ministry of Justice, whose real name is Yizan. Although he has no real job in the 3 law departments, the court specially granted him the title of the 4th-rank Zhongxin doctor. We all respectfully call him Lord Zanyi in our profession, Zhang Leqi replied. He controls the fate star and destiny, and he is a star god like you, young master. I thought you must know, Hong Fan suddenly realized. When Jin Hai was in court for the murder case in the Jiatong Hall, he had heard Hong Wen mention the names of several star gods in the 3 law departments. Can he have a solution for our case? Hong Fan's voice became anxious. More than a solution? The judge is a position in the underworld and legend, and ordinary people can't be won. Zhang Leqi's voice was full of admiration. Mr. Zanyi has come to Zijing twice, and I have seen his methods with my own eyes. The fate star can interpret the cause and see through the past, but it needs a medium. For example, the Lingshu sword in this case, the roof beam where the assassin hid, the wooden pillar that was pierced, and even that courtyard. With a supernatural power, the scene at that time can be reproduced, and the right and wrong are clear at a glance. Hong Fan heard this, and hope surged in his heart. With such supernatural power, solving the case is easy. Why didn't the captain say it earlier? He couldn't help but complain. It's not that I don't say it, it's just that it's really hard to invite the 3 star gods. Zhang Leqi smiled bitterly. The cases that can be handled by Zanyi Gong are all major cases, which need to be reported by the Provincial Judicial Inspection Department and then approved by the Ministry of Justice. Some cases are scheduled on a yearly basis. This time he happens to be near Zijing, so there's hope to invite him. Otherwise it's unknown how long it will take for him to get a number for the Chori Prefecture case. I can only say that this time it's just too coincidental, Zhang Leqi said while eating. He was quick with his hands and mouth, and quickly finished most of the braised beef. Hong Fan was a little stunned. The other party's words too coincidental just now touched him inexplicably. But thinking about it carefully, he got nothing. When he came to his senses, he saw that the meat on the table had been eaten by Zhang Leqi, leaving only some green leafy vegetables. Chapter 281 Yizan. On the same day, in the afternoon, winding more than 2,000 miles south from Zijing, the sand boat of the Ao family was slowly moving on the water. The Yao River is wide, and because it is used for water transport, it has been dredged many times, so the flow rate is slow. This trip is in the early spring, from north to south, and the wind is not always helpful. Even if the boatman uses the hard sail to the limit, the sand boat can only travel more than 300 miles a day. This speed cannot satisfy Ao Fui. Therefore, he did not hesitate to continue to consume his true essence, using the water-dissolving true essence to eliminate the resistance of the ship and increase the speed by 30 to 40%. In this way, the ship was able to cross Huaiyang State and Shengzhou within 5 days and approach the border of Zhanzhou. During the 5 days and nights, Ao Hickson stood on the ship's tower and looked out except for rest. She witnessed the drastic changes in the world with her own eyes. The fur coats worn by passers-by on the shore were replaced by thin gowns. The dead branches of Liangzhou were hung with new buds from Huaiyang State, and finally grew into a lush and evergreen appearance in Shengzhou overnight. When the spring in the south completely replaced the winter in the north, Ao Hickson felt like she was split apart. It was only her helpless body that sailed south, but her soul and the past 18 years were still in Zijing. She was not a lady from a good family after all. At 10:30 p.m., Ao Fui, who had overdrawn his true energy, returned to the cabin to rest. Ao Hickson personally cooked sweet soup and sent it to him, and massaged her father's legs and feet until he fell asleep. Then, she went back to her room, changed into men's clothes, took the silver bills and gold leaves sealed with oil paper and wax, and went on deck. Ao Hickson did not have the martial arts talent of her father and brother, but she had practiced martial arts since childhood and had no shortage of elixirs, and now she had also reached a high level of cultivation. It was very windy tonight. White waves rolled up at the stern, coated with moonlight. Ao Hickson stood silently. Large pieces of water vapor hid her face, and finally condensed into water droplets and dripped from her chin. She did not know her father's identity besides the gang leader, nor did she know the destination of the big ship under her feet. I will say goodbye to my father and brother tonight, and perhaps we will never meet again in this life. Many scenes flashed through Hickson's mind in an instant. The last one was more than a month ago, when Xiang Lifu, the head of Qingyuan Hall, knelt down on his knees in front of her. She remembered her disdain and mocking smile at that time. Raising half of her red lips, Hickson smiled in the same way. When the silver bell-like laughter dissipated in the wind, she faced the waves, used the Ji Shui Dian, and slid into the river silently like a swimming fish. The wind came from the north, filling the sails. When Hickson swam to the shore in one breath, when she looked back, the boat had been hidden in the moonlight and could not be seen. She stared to the south for a moment, wiped the tears and water from her cheeks, and strode north. On the 25th day of the first lunar month, just after the rainwater solar term, the weather was warm and cold, unpredictable. The east wind swept the snow away, and the sky turned into drizzle. Outside a noon gate in the north of Zhejiang City, Zhu Zixia of the Criminal Investigation Department and Gu Taining, the commander of the military academy, waited in the rain with several subordinates, looking into the distance from time to time. At 9:45 a.m., they waited for the arrival of the people. A few miles away, there was an official road sandwiched between winter wheat fields. Two fast horses galloped out of the yellow-green, followed by a huge beast with graceful steps. There was a sack under the jaw, and the body was more than 2 meters long. The shoulders were 2 feet higher than the horses. There were huge horns on the head that stretched toward the sky in the shape of palms, and the body was larger than that of an adult bull. It turned out to be a moose. The moose ran to the city in a blink of an eye, and before it could stop completely, the rider on its back slipped off the saddle and fell to the ground, without being stained by dust. He was about 40 years old, wearing a bright red brocade robe, with a jade-like complexion and a wealthy appearance. It was the contemporary star god Yizan, who was known for his fate. "I've been waiting for so long, finally Mr. Zan is here." Zhu Zixia stepped forward to greet him. "Old Zhu, you are so sincere in inviting me, how can Yizan not give me face?" Yizan raised his hand and flipped his bamboo hat onto his back, striding over to hug his old friend. "But friendship is friendship, and 20-year-old Pear Blossom White is indispensable. Don't worry, can I still deceive you?" Zhu Zixia laughed. "Not only Pear Blossom White, I can also invite you the most beautiful woman if you want." The two of them shook hands and exchanged a few pleasantries, and introduced Gu Taining. Instead of talking about business, they went into the city together to Mingyu Tower, on the same day, at 2 p.m. The gatekeeper of Cheryu nodded his head and took a nap after dinner. Half asleep and half awake, he heard footsteps outside the door. The one who came was a handsome man in luxurious clothes and a bamboo hat. He didn't knock on the door, but strode over the threshold. "Who are you? Please introduce your name first." The doorman rubbed his eyes, got up from the low stool, and stepped forward to stop him. "My last name is Yizan. You can go and report it yourself," the visitor said casually. "Then please wait for a moment, sir." The doorman said something and quickly turned into the backyard. Yizan stood in the yard, and seeing that there was no one around, he walked along the rain corridor. "The visitor claims to be Yizan." In the study, the doorman bowed and reported. "Sir, you have never mentioned this name before, so I asked him to wait at the door." When Hong Fan heard the report, his face was slightly stern, and he immediately led people to greet him. Unexpectedly, as soon as he left the yard, he suddenly had a whim and felt something out of thin air. "Ah, it's over here," a lazy voice came, and then a man in gorgeous clothes swaggered around the corner of the house. The doorman saw the person and his face turned pale. "Why did you come in by yourself, sir? I clearly told him to wait outside," he said in a hurry, and then hurriedly explained to Hong Fan. Yizan laughed. "You are indeed new here, and you don't know your master's family. It's not your fault, so he can't punish you." He looked at Hong Fan. "Are you Hong Fan, the current star master of the Sand World?" "Yes, but in person." Hong Fan bowed his hands. "It's the real deal," Yizan replied proudly, and without waiting for the host to invite him, he went straight into the courtyard with his hands behind his back. After entering the inner study, he slowed down his pace and looked around. This place is usually not used for receptions, and the furnishings are very simple. There are only a few words worth mentioning in the main hall. Life is temporarily entrusting to a dream in a dream, and worldly affairs are like hearing the wind in the wind. The swordsmanship has been mastered. You can take it, and kill the dragon wherever there is a dragon. You must know that when I was young, I had the ambition to catch the clouds, and I promised to be the best in the world. Yizan read them one by one, turned around and smiled. The handwriting is a little worse, but the meaning is good. Hong Fan was silent. In the inner room, there was a chimney incense burner on the long table, and agar wood was lit in the incense burner. Wisps of green smoke floated slowly and climbed onto a painting. The painting was of a gathering to enjoy the scenery. Although it had been framed, there was a blank space of more than 1 foot in the upper part, probably because the painting was not finished. On the lacquered pillars on both sides, there was a couplet of new ink characters. The moon is waning, but its light does not change. The sword is broken, but its strength does not change. Yizan looked at the painting, lost in thought for a moment, and finally put away his smile. He nodded and sat down in the guest seat. What kind of tea does Lord Zanya drink? Hong Fan walked around to the main seat and asked. Just use the rock tea on the top of the second cabinet, Yizan said without hesitation. P.S. The moon is waning, but its light does not change. The sword is broken, but its strength does not change. Mei Yaochan. Chapter 282 Depression. The rock tea in that grid is the most valuable thing in the study room in terms of market price. Hong Fan was shocked when he heard this, and immediately thought of the other party's supernatural power. He realized that the other party's previous looking at calligraphy and painting might not be just looking at calligraphy and painting. After opening the cabinet to take out the tea, Hong Fan opened a new cup. He pressed his hand on the copper pot filled with cold water, and the flames were strong. Soon, the lid of the pot was lifted by the steam, and the whistling sound from the spout of the pot filled the quiet room. The brass was burnt to dark red by Hong Fan's hand. He poured boiling water into the teapot, brewed the semi-fermented tea leaves, and exuded a fine and mellow aroma. The rock-bone flower fragrance, 100 twists and turns, it is not worse than the white pear blossoms of 20 years. Yizan sniffed the air and nodded with satisfaction. Little friend Hong, do you know that I am coming to investigate the case at 3 p.m. today? The Criminal Investigation Department notified me, but I didn't expect that Lord Zanya would come so early, Hong Fan replied. He handed over the teacup with both hands. Since you've said that, it's not presumptuous of me to come here. Yizan took it and looked at the green-yellow tea soup, as if tasting it. I came early mainly because I wanted to make friends with you. There are fewer and fewer star gods nowadays. You and I were chosen from all over the world. It's not an ordinary fate, he said with a smile, tilting his head and pouring the boiling water into his throat. Hong Fan has always been good at capturing emotions. He heard that Yizan had something to say, but he couldn't figure it out for a while, so he just thanked him solemnly. I have heard that Mr. Zanya is the right hand of the 3 law departments. He is busy with important cases. I am really grateful that you can come to Zijing in your busy schedule, my friend. You are too polite. Yizan wiped the corner of his mouth and waved his hand. I am busy and idle on weekdays. People outside call me the 3 law department's star god. In fact, I only have the honorary title of Zhongxin Doctor. I don't have a permanent position and I am not controlled by the 3 law departments. He didn't think much of the word right hand. As for the important cases, haha, why is Lord Zanya laughing? Hong Fan asked. Why else? Laughing is because it's funny, Yizan sneered. The little princess drowned a cat and cried and asked me to find the murderer. The imperial concubine lost her child and asked me to find out if it was poisoned. The minister's father died and he suspected that his political enemies bribed the doctor. A few words were strung together in his mouth, flowing like a jingle. These things, if they depend on the person, are as heavy as a mountain, but if they depend on the matter, they are not as light as a feather. It's just that it happened to an important person. It became an important case, Yizan said and laughed again. Hong Fan, who was sitting opposite him, was stunned. Although he didn't mention the name in his words, it would not be difficult for someone who was interested to find out. These things, Lord Zanya? Hong Fan hesitated. Why, are you afraid that I will cause trouble by my mouth? Yizan glanced at him. We are the Star Lords. Although we are just that. Ordinary dignitaries cannot harm us. Hong Fan didn't know how to respond. There was no sound in the study for a while, but the crows on the old tree outside were calling loudly. Yizan listened to the crows and suddenly sighed, grabbed the still hot teapot and poured it into his mouth. If it were immortal, this would be enough to kill him. I like your Chori mansion. It's very clean, he said abruptly. Chori mansion is a newly built mansion. No one lived there before me, Hong Fan replied. It's not about new or old, Yizan shook his head. I often go to the palace and the king's mansion in Shenzhen. As for the residences of generals and ministers, I don't need to report when I go in and out. Hey, his face showed a sneer that he didn't want to hide. In a high-rise building with double leaves, you can't find a well that hasn't had a dead body. In a clear pond with red flowers and clear water, there are drowned bodies everywhere. All the dignitaries have guilty consciences, so they are all afraid of me. Yizan had a special aura when he said this, as if he was a rogue who was bullying others. The power of the fate-seeking was already revealed. However, after listening to Hong Fan, he felt the danger of a knife against his throat. In his opinion, it was incredible that he could lie freely in a place like Shenzhen where there were so many dignitaries and masters. Especially Yizan was so outspoken. Why are you so nervous, my friend? Yizan saw what Hong Fan was thinking. I am not a talkative person, and I am not timid. I will never say anything about the really important things, even if I am beaten to death. Besides, I know that you are very tight-lipped, Alice. Life is short, so you have to waste some precious things to make it interesting. He pushed back the empty teapot like a cow chewing a peony, and motioned Hong Fan to continue. Does Lord Zanyu know me well? Hong Fan asked, suppressing his hesitation and keeping his muscles relaxed. He really has some secrets that cannot be shared with others. I know most of what you do every day by walking around this Chori mansion. Yizan smiled. I can see the scope of your actions, but I can't see through your thoughts. That's what the telepath guy is good at, but he is not as accurate as I am in judging people, he said proudly. It is said that those who know others are wise, and those who know themselves are enlightened. People always say that people deceive others, but in fact, people are best at deceiving themselves. In Dahua and Zhao, if extreme people are compared to dung beetles, then Shenzhen is a dung ball. You can't stop them from gathering here, so I've seen too much. People with lofty ambitions use mean means. Those who seek fame and reputation build bridges and pave roads, and the more useless people are, the more they complain about everything. People are too complicated. We can still make a general assessment of their deeds, but we can't say anything about their hearts. After Yizan finished speaking, he smacked his lips and chewed the tea leaves stuck in his teeth and swallowed them. Mr. Zanyu is right, I've learned something, Hong Fan praised him. It is a taboo for smart people to talk about deep things when you are not familiar with them. For the time traveler, these words just now are nothing new. He didn't understand the purpose of the other party's words, but he had to admit that this person was very different. Hong Fan's caution dampened Yizan's interest. My friend, what will you do after the investigation of this case? The latter suddenly asked. Blood for blood, revenge for revenge, Hong Fan said without thinking, as if a sword was unsheathed and clear water flowed eastward. Great, great, that's right, Yizan laughed and slapped his thigh. It's a pity that my fate is not good at fighting. Most of the time, I can only be a ghost, and I can't be as happy as your sand world. He sighed with envy, and then noticed the daffodils in full bloom on the wooden frame in the corner of the house. This flower can't stand the summer, Yizan said suddenly. So it's a blessing for it to die in spring. His lively demeanor completely turned cold. The afternoon spring light shone obliquely from the window and climbed onto Yizan's robe. The bright scales appeared on the bright red brocade, but it made the unlit parts look darker. Hong Fan heard footsteps coming from the front yard. Unknowingly, Shen Shizhen, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, was approaching. They are coming. Yizan's eyes suddenly condensed. It was as if he was wearing a mask, as if he was suppressing his worries. It was as if he had woken up from a dream. Let's go over there. He stood up and left the study. Hong Fan followed him, thinking for a while, but still couldn't tell whether this man was free and easy or decadent. Chapter 283 Rituals. The side courtyard of Chori Mansion was packed with guests. When Zan Yuanzi was here, this place had never been so lively. The fate-seeking ability can only be used for dead objects, not for living people, Yizan explained to everyone. The so-called fate refers to nodes of important changes in objects, for example, people from living to dead, jade from complete to broken, and the word seeing refers to looking back. Since it is looking back, it can only see the past, and the farther back, the more laborious it is, and the furthest it can go is only a few years. He said the ugly words first. Mr. Zanyu's word only is really modest, Gutaning interrupted. With this magical power, there is no case in the world that is difficult to solve. Mr. Gu is too kind, Yizan replied. His words were respectful, but his attitude was casual. My magical power has two limitations. First, although I am the Star Master, I cannot specify the time and events of the retrospection. What I get depends entirely on the will of Zulong. Second, the content of the retrospection is often blurred and distorted. Sometimes there are only pictures, sometimes only sounds, and sometimes only vague feelings. Zhu Zixu nodded repeatedly, obviously knowing these situations in advance. In general, the more objects used as media, the more critical they are, and the more accurate the positioning, the closer the time, the clearer the information, Yizan added, and turned to Hong Fan again. So I'll tell you in advance, if this courtyard and the broken sword are not enough today, if you want to try again, you have to open the coffin and take the body. Compared with when he was talking to Zhu Zixu and Gu Taining, his tone at this moment was even more intimate. Hong Fan nodded decisively. In the customs of Dahua, it is extremely ominous to raise a corpse after burial, and it is not an exaggeration to say that it is blasphemy. But Hong Fan is a modern person. Even though he has traveled through time once, he still has the concept of death is like the extinguishing of a light in his heart. Whether the burial was good or bad, it was not as important as the revenge of blood feuds. He thought so, and he expected Zhan Yuanzi to agree. I have talked about the divine power of Destiny Star, and then the rituals, Yizan continued. Every time the Destiny Star is activated, if you want to get a legal result recognized by the court, you must go through the prescribed witness process. First, there should be 3 witnesses, 2 of whom must come from 2 of the 8 departments, and the remaining 1 can be selected at will. Second, the 3 witnesses must remain silent during the whole process of tracing back, and they must not communicate with each other after the completion. They must write down the details of the tracing back, sign, and seal. Finally, only the parts of the 3 documents that can completely correspond can be used as evidence. This process regulation refreshed Hong Fan's ears. But after thinking about it for a while, this strictness is also necessary. If it is not followed, Yizan, relying on his Destiny Star, can be said to be the golden mouth and jade words on many things. The next step is to choose 3 witnesses. The magical power of the dragon-given Destiny Star has always been known only to the Star God. Today is a rare opportunity to experience it, and everyone in the courtyard is curious. Even Zhu Zixu and Gu Taining volunteered. Just as the others were eager to try for the last chance, Yizan took the initiative to look at Hong Fan. Friend Hong, you are a close friend of the victim. Would you like to be the 3rd witness? I would love to. Hong Fan clasped his fists and replied. Yizan took the Lingshu sword from Zhang Leqi and stood by the column where Zhan Yuanzi had sat. His face was facing the room where the battle took place. Hong Fan and the other 3 stood in a triangle with a distance of 7 feet. All the strangers retreated 5 feet away and could only watch from afar. There were no gestures, no burning incense, and no sacrifices. Before starting, Yizan did not even ask a question like "Are you ready?" The moment the fate was activated, Hong Fan felt a deep dizziness rising from the bottom of his heart. It was as if his soul had left his body and was sitting on a bumpy car. After an unknown amount of time, he arrived at the first stop. The world was dim. On a night with light snow, it was still the courtyard of Chori Mansion. There were 2 closed doors in front of him. The snow beside him reflected the silver glow, and the full moon hung in the sky. Hong Fan wanted to observe more, but soon found that everything was out of his control. At this moment, the tightly closed wooden door exploded outwards. The wooden thorns flew and penetrated the field of vision. Zhan Yuanzi flew out with Lingshu in his hand and entered the courtyard. A harsh friction sound was heard, and the direction was behind him. The view turned at the same time as Zhan Yuanzi. From the other side of the courtyard, a burly assassin in black waved a broadsword and slashed across. Hong Fan tried his best to see. However, this man and the sword were only vague at the moment. Until the moment when the broadsword and Lingshu met, everything became clear. Time slowed down. He saw sparks from the friction between steel, blooming gold, and slowly dimming as it flew. He saw the collision of swords and knives, creating strong winds, dizzying ripples, and tearing up hexagonal snowflakes. In a blink of an eye, light, heat, and cold each ended their lives. The assassin was wearing a nightgown and covered his head and face. So Hong Fan stared at his knife. But it was just an ordinary heavy knife. There was no inscription on the knife, and it was chipped at the moment of collision. But it did not affect the power of the horizontal cut. Lingshu made a clanging sound and broke into 2 pieces. Zhan Yuanzi flew back and hit the pillar directly, and fell to the ground. Someone spoke from the side and back. Killing a hunter in Liu Mei, the 3 of you are more than enough. The voice was thick and bright, but the person who spoke was short. Then 2 more people came out of the room. The one on the left was tall and thin, and the one on the right had a bald head, both wearing black scarves. It was originally to be foolproof, otherwise I could defeat him alone, the bald man continued. The 4 assassins joined together and surrounded the target who had lost the ability to resist. Hong Fan tried his best to remember their respective characteristics, and he didn't even have time to look at Zhan Yuanzi. He only heard the latter's breathing, which was getting more and more labored, with bubbling sounds. This meant that blood was pouring into his lungs. "Kill him, don't waste time," the voice came from the south. The view turned back. The 5th assassin stood on the roof, also wearing black and masked, without any weapon. Hong Fan's heartstrings tightened. It cannot be said that these 5 people have no identifiable features. Hong Fan has memorized their facial features. But this is far from enough to identify them. The short man who spoke first picked up the broken sword and walked in front of Zhan Yuanzi. "Why kill me?" the latter raised his head and asked with difficulty. Such a simple question seemed to stump the 5 people. The short man glanced at the man on the roof, raised his sword, and pointed it at his heart. "Ha!" Zhan Yuanzi smiled bitterly, knowing that he would die today. "Don't hurt others," he finally asked. The short assassin was stunned by the words, and his hand paused, and he couldn't help but reply. "I'm sorry," he thrust hard. The steel penetrated the wood with a light sound. The snow on the eaves shook and fell down. The picture stopped. Hong Fan was almost in despair. At this time, he heard Ji Zhan's voice. "Then let's take them one by one." The perspective turned back and focused on the man on the roof. The universe spun instantly, and time flew back upstream. Through the connection between cause and effect, multiple levels of backtracking were performed without a physical medium. This was something Yi Zhan could only do after entering the Xiantian realm. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 284, The Ghost Blocking the River. It could be a moment or 10,000 years, the passage of time is unknown. Hong Fan came back to his senses. He was in a dark room, sitting in the innermost corner. The 5 people were scattered in the room, wearing casual clothes, and only their backs could be seen. The walls were all made of wood. His feet were shaking slightly, probably in the cabin. No one spoke, probably waiting. After a short while, light footsteps were heard outside. A woman came in, wearing a red dress and holding an oil lamp. Her face was beautiful under the firelight. Hong Fan had seen it before. The daughter of the leader of the Fu Bo gang, Aos. It has been confirmed that the target is at home. She didn't waste words and tried to explain it concisely. "The clothes and weapons you need are ready. Get off from the North Pier in a while, change clothes and do your work when you get there, and then go to the South Pier when you are done. This ship will wait for you there. Pick up the people and go directly out of the city to Shuai'an Pier. Horses are ready at the pier, and you can return when you get there." The plan was simple and effective. However, Hong Fan only felt it was absurd. Until this moment, looking at Aos face, he still couldn't understand why the Fubo gang targeted Zhan Yuanzi. In some previous actions, the Tiki did stand on the opposite side of the local forces in Zhejiang. But everyone knows that this is just official business. How stupid is it to take subversive risks to retaliate for these minor incidents? Absurd, confused. But beyond that, it is an irrepressible burning heat. Zhan Yuanzi has no personal grudge against the Ao family. The only entanglement comes from the dispute that started with the Wang Mingke case, and as the actual decision-maker of the second team, it was Hong Fan's own judgment that led to all this. The fire in his heart began to burn. Aos words continued. "During the operation, everything is subject to the orders of Uncle Mi-jun." After she finished the last sentence, she went out and left. Among the 5 people, the one named Mi-jun walked to the front and turned to face the 4. He was about 50 years old, with thick black hair and a little frost on his temples. It was the man who stood on the roof during the assassination. "Did you hear what the young lady said? This time we are going to attack the T cavalry. You know how dangerous it is. We can't make any mistakes." He stared at them, giving people the illusion of a dagger against their throats. In the perspective, there are still 4 people whose true faces are not revealed. The left one is short, the left 2 is tall and strong, the right 2 is tall and thin, and the right one is bald. It's like 4 forks in the causal line. The picture is still here. There is a slight pause, as if Yizan is making a choice. Then, the vision focuses on the left one. It is this person who stabbed the last sword. Time is reversed again. Winter, daytime. Thick snow is piled up in the quaint mansion. There are cypress trees planted in the yard. They are quite old, and the branches are higher than the roof. 2 middle-aged men and several servants surrounded a short old man and walked under the shade of the white and green trees. "Master, you are so old, and you still want to help," said the man dressed as a butler. "Father is still as vigorous as ever, so it's fine if he goes," another middle-aged man said. His face was 70% similar to the old man. The key is that the other party didn't explain the reason and didn't allow others to accompany him, not even the golden spear, he said angrily. "There's nothing I can do. I owed them a favor back then, and I can't help but repay it," the short old man said. Several people chatted casually and soon left the gate of the mansion. The old man ordered everyone to stay. He walked more than 100 steps along the wide alley, and when he reached the alley entrance, he couldn't help but look back. Under the plaque of Feming Huifu, the family members and housekeeper who were seeing him off were also looking at him. As they looked at each other, the world changed. Green mountains rose on both sides. In the valley in the middle, the martial arts field was paved with fine sand, and the swords were running wildly. There were many onlookers, including his own children and outsiders. The burly middle-aged warrior held a large sword with a ring back in his hand. In 3 consecutive steps, he cut the wooden pillars on the left and right with his sword flowers, and the last slash cut through the 3 shields. "It is indeed the Duan family sword," the guest praised loudly. The warrior stroked his beard and smiled. At this time, the young man beside him came over quickly and whispered in his ear. "Master, there is a messenger outside, saying that it is your old boss." The warrior's face turned cold. He instinctively glanced at the steel sword in his hand. The distant mountains were reflected on the bright blade. The perspective penetrated. The temperature dropped sharply, and the air was refreshing and cold. A Taoist temple was built in the open space on the top of the mountain. The stone hill on the side was submerged in the clouds, and higher peaks stood around. The voices were noisy, and all the doors were open. A boy of about 14 or 15 years old knelt in the center of the hall and kowtowed to the tall and thin warrior in Taoist robes on the main seat. "Zhang Xiaohu, from today on, you are my Chu Jinggan's registered disciple," the latter announced loudly. After speaking, he looked up and saw the messenger in black clothes crossing the outermost threshold of the Taoist temple. The cheers were loud and warm. The model of the sand ship was offered to the Dragon Temple on the riverside. The new ship was launched under the watchful eyes of the crowd. "We have the 7th ship in Shundexing. The boss has to say a few words to everyone," the cheerful steward shouted. The boss, dressed in a brocade robe, wiped his bald head and strode onto the stage. "I am honored that you all can come to support me," he smiled, but the back of his clothes was soaked with sweat. "The secret order that I thought I would never receive again was delivered to me half an hour ago. The ghost blocking the river. A mask that you can never get rid of once you put it on." The picture froze for the last time, as if the promoter had exhausted his strength. Then, the light, shadow and sound rolled back like a raging wave. The high platform, the new ship, the Taoist temple, the mountain villa, the mansion, the cabin, the small courtyard. Everything returned to the starting point of the retrospection. The broken sword pierced Zhang Yuanzi's heart. The dizziness spread again. Yizan's body swayed slightly, and he held onto the pillar beside him. Exactly 1 hour had passed. Hong Fan opened his eyes and saw the western world, with a setting sun covering half the sky. Thinking of those 6 faces, he felt the blood in his body burning. Chapter 285 River Demon. The 26th day of the first lunar month. It was just after 3 p.m. In the Martial Arts Academy, the ZZ Hall. 6 teams of Imperial Guards were present, all wearing red silk clothes with cloud patterns. Although the atmosphere was solemn, it was full of flowers. Su Guinian sat aside, looking quite solemn. Standing in the middle was Gu Taining, the 4th-rank commander. The assassination of Zhang Yuanzi, the 2nd team of the State Imperial Guards, had a result yesterday. He looked around at everyone, his voice heavy. The Fubo gang did it. The instigator was Aos Hexen, and the executors were the 5 river-blocking ghosts. The hall was still quiet. But this was obviously beyond many people's expectations. The results of yesterday's retrospective were highly confidential. Apart from Hong Fan, one of the witnesses, even Wu Hongling and Wu Rui, who were present throughout the process, did not know. The reason for keeping it secret was, of course, revenge. It can be confirmed that the 3 members of the AO family have been missing for many days, and it is very likely that they fled Zhejiang after the incident, Gu Taining continued. The arrest warrant for them will be sent to Kyushu soon. We are calling you all together today to do the rest. He gave a look, and the stewards waiting beside him immediately distributed several volumes of copy documents to each team. Hong Fan opened it and found that it contained detailed information about several warriors, even portraits, killing methods, and past battle records. Zheng Daoqi was a gangster in his early years, nicknamed the River Monster, now clean, nicknamed the River God. Gu Taining's voice echoed in the beams. He has 7 meridians of cultivation, practices the dividing the rivers art, does river operations, and is the owner of Shundexing. As he spoke, he turned around and marked the location on the Liangzhou map hanging behind him. 110 miles south of Zhejiang, Shaanxi County. He didn't stop talking. Qiu Jinggan, nicknamed Peiyan, has peak cultivation, is proficient in many palm techniques, and is the master of Xingyan Temple, 1,400 miles southwest of Zhejiang, Hongai City GQ Mountain. There was a second punctuation mark on the map. Duan Lichen, nicknamed Crushing the Front, has reached the pinnacle of cultivation, and inherited the Duan family sword from his family. He went out to explore when he was young, and succeeded to the position of head of the family after returning home, 1,100 miles due west of Zhejiang, Duanjiazhuang outside Boyang City. The third point. Golden Spear Huan has a heaven-human sympathy cultivation, has been immersed in spearmanship for 50 years, and retired 3 years ago, 500 miles northwest of Zhejiang, Fiming City Huifu. The fourth point. Mi Jun, famous for his one-handed swordsmanship, is called Fipu, has a heaven-human sympathy cultivation, and runs an escort agency, 170 miles north of Zhejiang, Qinghui City. The fifth and last point. The regular collection and control of information on warriors, martial arts, and sects is one of the main duties of this Hangwu Academy. Relying on this, from yesterday evening to now, less than a whole day, with the help of various fragments of information obtained by backtracking, the identities of the 5 river-blocking ghosts have been confirmed. The Tiki finished reading the information. Gu Taining began to assign tasks. Mi Jun is the strongest among the 5, and there are several strong helpers in the escort agency. Team 3 and Team 6 will be responsible for this. Golden Spear Huan is not inferior to Mi Jun in martial arts, but he is old and weak, and only his only son has some fighting ability. Team 4 will do it. After the 2 heavenly beings assigned their targets, 3 teams were assigned to the remaining 3 people. Duan Licheng's swordsmanship is fierce, and he has his own clan to protect him. Team 1 will go, Gu Taining said. Master Lu Yun, don't be reckless. He paused and gave another warning. Master Lu Yun scratched his face. Qiu Jinggan has 6 true disciples and more than a dozen outer disciples. Team 5 will be in charge. There is also Zheng Daoqi. This guy runs a shipping company, and his martial arts are the worst among the 5, but he definitely has a lot of people. Gu Taining stopped and looked at the second team, a little embarrassed. Wu Rui's fighting ability is also outstanding among the 6 teams, and as for Hong Fan, it goes without saying. But now Zhan Yuanzi was assassinated, Bai Jiaxi's men have not returned to Zhejiang, and the entire second team has only 2 people. Sending them is not in line with the idea of the Martial Arts Academy to use more people to fight fewer people and use the strong to fight the weak. Hong Fan took a deep breath and was about to speak, but was interrupted. Don't be embarrassed, I will go with you this time. Wu Hongling, who was dressed in the official uniform of the Dean, bowed and said. Most of the 16s of the Liangzhou Martial Arts Academy are martial artists. However, the Dean himself is only a civil servant's position and has no obligation to go out on field work. This time is different from the past. Since the Dean Wu has this intention, I will not stop him. Gu Taining thought for a while and approved it. Although the second team still has only 3 people, the least among the 5 roots, Wu Hongling's strength alone exceeds that of Bai Jiaxi and Zhan Yuanzi combined, and her combat power has increased dramatically. This time, it would be best to capture them alive, but dead is not bad either. After everything was agreed, Gu Taining made a final summary. As for the Fubo Gang's headquarters in the south of the city, I will personally lead the team and wipe it out in one fell swoop. At the command, all the T-riders stood up, saluted, and filed out. Shaanxi County is in the south of Zhejiang. As soon as the second team of 3 people rode out of the city gate, Hong Fan raised his hand to signal to slow down. "See ye, please take this King Kong horse." He turned over and got off the horse, and explained. Wu Hongling immediately understood what the other party meant. "We must act together," she ordered with a serious face. Hong Fan just shook his head. 10 days ago, that sword hit here, and it hurt me," he pressed his chest. "If you wait any longer, my blood will be burned dry." The two looked at each other. After a breath, Wu Hongling turned away first. "You have always been the most opinionated. Since you don't listen to me, go ahead. If you die at the hands of Zhang Daoqi, Ruai and I will follow and avenge you," she said angrily again. "The minister is joking. How can they be qualified to kill me?" Hong Fan laughed loudly, ignoring the eyes of passers-by, and gathered sand wings on the official road, rising into the sky in a few steps. When Hong Fan left Zizi Hall, it was Shen Shizhen, 4 p.m. At this point, he was in the Pure Realm with 5 meridians, and the 6th meridian was nearly 60% open. This was enough to support a flight speed of 100 km per hour. At the beginning of Yushichu, 5 p.m., Hong Fan arrived at his destination. Sangxi County was located along the river and had a population of only 20,000. It was originally a small place, so Shundexing, which had 7 large ships, was particularly famous. The headquarters of Shundexing was located in the downtown area, and there was a doorman who looked at people with a squinting eye at the door. People were coming and going, and everyone was watching. Hong Fan suppressed his anger and walked in with his hands behind his back. Seeing this, the doorman suddenly raised his head and stood up to stop the intruder, but found that the intruder seemed to be walking slowly, and he could not catch up with him. Under the eaves of the main hall, Hong Fan stopped. "Where is the river monster Zhang Daoqi?" This shout shook the clay pot, like a thunderbolt, and startled the entire Shund bank. Several strong men came quickly from behind, blocking the way with their arms folded. Seeing that there were more people on his side, the hesitant doorman regained his courage and rushed forward to grab Hong Fan. He immediately found that what he was holding seemed not to be a flesh and blood arm, but a hot iron bar. "Ouch!" the doorman exclaimed and stepped back. Chapter 286 Chao Ian. Hong Fan glanced at the people in front of him, but he didn't see Zhang Daoqi. "The Tiki are arresting people. Those who don't want to cause trouble, please get out of the way," he maintained his last self-control and advised in a low voice. No one moved. The people in Shun Hall had never seen the Tiki, but this red cloud-patterned silk dress was really eye-catching. It was not from the common people. But so what? The person who came was only 18 or 19 years old, as beautiful as a woman, and there was only one person. More than a dozen people had gathered in the hall. "I don't care who you are or what your status is. When you come to our place, please show some respect," a tall man with a cultivation level of Guantong realm said. He had outstanding eyesight and could see that Hong Fan's hands behind his back were shaking. The man thought it was cowardice, so he became more powerful and pressed forward a few steps. However, Hong Fan no longer had the patience to negotiate. "Hey," he squeezed out a sneer from the corner of his mouth and punched back. This punch shook away the man's arms that came to block him, and then he turned his palm to circle the back of his neck and pulled it down. Guantong Jing's face hit Hun Jing's knee. There was a crisp sound of crack. The man fell to the ground. The first blood was stained on the surface of his silk trousers. The people of Shundexing were stunned and stepped back. It's not that they can't stand it, there are not many Hun Jing in a place like Sangxi Town, and Guantong is already a first-class player. At this time, the main person came out from the back hall. He was dressed in a brocade robe, with a jade hat on his bald head, and looked like a businessman. Seeing that his general was lying on the ground and no one dared to help him, he was furious. When he looked up again, he saw the iconic dress of the Tiki, and Zhang Daoqi's eyelids jumped. The Zhangwu Academy, which ranked first among the 8 departments, was powerful, and the people below didn't know how powerful it was, so how could he not know? All the arrogance and fighting spirit disappeared. "But is there a misunderstanding?" Zhang Daoqi asked softly. "No misunderstanding, Zhang Daoqi." Hong Fan laughed fiercely and stared at the man's eyebrows. "Kneel down, surrender, and you can be spared." 10 words, each one was as if made of iron. Zhang Daoqi choked for a moment. "Sir, this is not how things should be done, right?" He wanted to mediate. But the other party started with the word kneel down, which was a dead end. "Very good, you won't kneel." Hong Fan smiled with satisfaction, and his hands trembled more and more. Then you have chosen to resist the law. He didn't even want to use the sand world. Hong Fan moved sideways a few steps, came to the side of the courtyard pillar, and kicked it. With a bang, the stone base under the pillar slid out. The beam collapsed immediately. Under the gaze of 20 or 30 people, the wooden pillar was pulled down and lifted. What do you mean, sir? Zhang Daoqi's Adam's apple rolled, and his voice tightened. I don't understand. Hong Fan let out a long breath and lowered his voice. Where did you go when you touched my brother? A loud shout came first. Then the wooden pillar was swung vigorously. The big and small guys of Shun Bank immediately scattered. Zhang Daoqi was forced to face the enemy. The flower stand flew up, the bricks were crushed, and the wall exploded. He used all his footwork to dodge 3 attacks in a row, but was immediately caught up by the 4th attack. Water condensed into ice from the void and turned into armor. The air roared. The wooden pillars, including the armor and the arm, were all broken. The force was so great that the body itself was also cracked. The screams resounded throughout Shund. Hong Fan threw away the pillar and hit Zhang Daoqi's dantian with a palm, then grabbed the back of his head with one hand and lifted him up. Where are the 3 people from the AO family? The former asked. I don't know them, the latter replied. Hong Fan nodded with satisfaction. He carried Zhang Daoqi to the stone steps beside the hall, leaving a red river behind him. He pressed down with force. With a thud, his face was stamped on the stone like a seal. When he was lifted up, Zhang Daoqi's nose was already crooked. Where are the 3 people from the AO family? I don't know. Asked for the 2nd time. Answered for the 2nd time. Covered for the 2nd time. The sound of bones breaking. Hong Fan lifted the man in his hand, and a few broken teeth and small pieces of stone powder fell off. Where are the 3 AO family members? 3 questions. I really don't know. 3 answers. The voice is vague. The 3rd cover. This time, Zhang Daoqi's facial bones have sunken, his face skin has rolled up, and his facial features can't be distinguished. Please, please, no more questions and answers. Just the 4th cover. Zhang Daoqi didn't move. In the sea of consciousness, the roots of the dragon soul tree swung, absorbing considerable vitality. Hong Fan let go of his hand and stood up. Looking around, Shund Hall was in a mess and empty. His hands stopped shaking. At the gate in the distance, an unknown passerby carefully looked inside. Hong Fan didn't care, and sat down next to the corpse to regulate his breath. 2/4 of an hour later, the sand wings spread and flew to the southwest. Hongai City is at the southernmost tip of Liangzhou. This journey is a full 1,300 miles. Hong Fan took 2 breaks on the way and arrived at about 2 a.m. His desire for revenge was urgent. But the more emotional he became, the more rational he became in his actions. Shayu landed at the foot of Jiqiu Mountain. Hong Fan randomly picked a cave and entered it. Not long after, a skinny brown bear ran out groaning. He used the counting of breaths to cut off all distracting thoughts and meditated until sunrise. All his energy was restored and his Chong channel was 70% unblocked. The weather outside the cave was fine and the brown bear had long disappeared. Hong Fan touched his cheek and it was hot. So he walked up the mountain. Jiqiu Mountain has many facets and its ridges are raised like a dragon, hence the name. The side of the mountain road was covered with thick snow. After being left to dry for a whole winter, the snow became extremely dry, the surface was broken like powder, but the bottom was half frozen. Every time Hong Fan stepped down, a creaking sound came from the soles of his boots. Depressing and sharp. There was no one in the mountains. As he walked step by step, the creaking sounds piled up, sounding like ice cracking deep in the snowy mountains. When the mountain road ended and he could see the Taoist temple on the top, Hong Fan's killing intent was boiling. Outside the temple, there were 2 young Taoist priests guarding the gate, probably outer disciples. After Hong Fan came up, he did not speak to them, but raised his hand and pulled out a sand whip from under the snow. The long whip flew and cut off the plaque with the 3 characters Xingyan Temple. You, what are you doing? The young Taoist priest's eyes widened when he saw this, and just as he came up to question, he ran into the Taoist key wave head-on. Where is Chu Jinggan? A whistle rose from the ground to the sky, swept over the Taoist temple on the top of the mountain, wandered around, and reached the dangerous peak outside the clouds. When the echo returned, it was even more magnificent and empty, as if the world was opening. No one responded. The 2 young Taoist priests fell to the ground trembling, with a yellow stain on their crotch. Hong Fan strode straight in. The second door was kicked open. Hong Fan stepped over the threshold and saw several Daoists closing the third door and shouting in panic. "Go and tell our master, bad guys are coming." With a click, the door was bolted. A few breaths later, it was shattered by the flames. Hong Fan walked through and crushed the threshold. In front of the hall that he had seen in the flashback, Qiu Jingyan stood tall, with 14 disciples in front of him waiting in full battle array. "Who is coming?" the head of Xingyan Temple shouted. "I am Hong Fan, the commander of the Wuyin State Department Tiki," Hong Fan replied, with a fierce look on his face. "I am here to take the life of Zhan Yuanzi." This time, there was no negotiation. With a roar, Hong Fan accelerated and pressed forward. With one step, the earth trembled. At this moment, the sound of the tide could be heard in the mountains. It was the snow that had accumulated in the winter of Jikyu Mountain that was realized later and collapsed with a roar when worshipping the mountain. Chapter 287 Tired. There was only one opponent, but the 8 outer disciples in the front seemed to be facing the power of heaven and earth. Zhang Xiaohu, who had just joined the sect, was among them. They were so frightened that they could not move, and were soon knocked down by the passing sand. Hong Fan rushed to the front of the hall. On the stone steps, there were 6 people in front of Qiu Jingyan, divided into 3 rows. The first and second true disciples stretched out their arms and palms, but were blocked by the rising sand flow in front of them. Hong Fan broke through the sand curtain from the center line and passed through easily. The third and fourth people used the left and right opening palm method. The power was good, but the speed was too slow. Hong Fan hit the third person in the stomach with a fire cloud palm, and the sand spikes penetrated the fourth person's calf. They rushed over several steps. The last 2 people were anxious and used the heartbreaking palm method. Hong Fan did not avoid it again, but took the palms with his left and right hands. The true energy of the 5 meridians surged, knocking the 2 high-level disciples back. There was no obstacle between the enemies. Hong Fan jumped up and punched hard, and the firepower overflowed. The roar of the avalanche also reached its highest point at this time. Qiu Jingyan narrowed his eyes slightly. Facing the fierce punch, he did not dodge or avoid, but grabbed the eldest disciple who was about to fall beside him and blocked him. For a moment, Hong Fan hesitated. He stopped punching and retracted his momentum, but it was difficult for him to change his position, and he was hit on the right shoulder by the opponent who was waiting for him. The pain spread immediately, and Hong Fan coughed up blood, but felt refreshed. "You are indeed a damn person." Qiu Jingyan used the force to slide back a foot, and when he was about to wait for an opportunity to attack, he saw the sand flow sweeping in front of him, and in an instant it attached to the opponent's body. The 2.5-meter tall golden armored giant pressed forward. Hong Fan smashed his fist, but was blocked by his backhand. Qiu Jingyan put his fingers together like a sword, and stabbed straight in. This sword finger stabbed 2 inches into Hong Fan's waist, and was immediately stuck and locked. The sense of crisis gripped Qiu Jingyan's heart like a palm. Hong Fan cut down with his hand knife, and the edge of his palm sharpened like a blade. A severed wrist fell to the ground. Blood spurted out like a fountain. "Am I going to die?" Qiu Jingyan looked at the severed arm, his mind wandering for a moment. Before the pain came, he already had the answer. "I am going to die." He raised his eyes, and a huge golden fist came. The head burst like a watermelon, and the red and white juices smeared on the sand armor. The headless body fell backwards. The disciples of Xingyan Temple did not dare to move. The sound of the tide gradually dissipated. Hong Fan removed the sand armor and looked in the direction where the sound came from. In the distance, solid snow mist rose and fell. He saw the mountains shaking off their long stagnant winter clothes, revealing sharp edges in the sun. Hong Fan did not leave Jikyu Mountain immediately. Qiu Jingyan has been studying palm techniques all his life, and he really has something. The palm that just hit Hong Fan's shoulder, combined with the feminine internal energy, broke the meridians near this Hong Fu acupoint. This kind of injury cannot be dragged on. Hong Fan quickly went down the mountain and found the cave he had been in before. After a while, the brown bear, who had just come back and had not slept for long, ran out again with a wail. Hong Fan sat in the cave, carefully practicing to comb out the injuries to ensure that they would not get worse. Then, after his true energy was restored, he set off to the third place. 600 miles north of Xingyan is the territory of Duanjiazhuang in Boyang City. It was just noon when Hong Fan arrived. There was no snow in the valley. Boyang City is geographically further south than Zhejiang, and is sandwiched between 2 mountains, so it embraced spring early. It had been 12 hours since Hong Fan last ate. He had to eat something. After walking half a circle in the forest, Hong Fan caught a musk deer, roasted it with a flame flow and ate half of it without any seasoning. Warriors have a large appetite and are very resistant to hunger. Hong Fan originally planned to eat a bear in Jikyu Mountain. But firstly, he borrowed someone else's cave, and secondly, he didn't want to fly with a belly full of meat to increase consumption, so he finally gave up. The meat of musk deer is slightly fishy. This made Hong Fan even more anxious. He realized that he had made a mistake. Driven by rage, Hong Fan punched Chu Jinggen's head so hard that he couldn't interrogate him about the whereabouts of the 3 people from the AO family. He never made such a mistake. So Hong Fan forced himself to be patient and meditate until he came out of the forest at 8 o'clock in the evening. At this time, the Chong channel had been opened to 85%. Standing on the mountainside, he cast his sight. The mountains and forests were heavy. The long night was like a curtain. Only the village in the valley burned a corner with lights. Hong Fan walked towards the lights and heard a faint sound coming from the deepest part of the wind, as if the mountains were sobbing. The darkness actually had weight. It was a little laborious to breathe. Although he was reluctant to admit it, Hong Fan knew that he was very tired. Not only physically, but more spiritually. He hadn't slept well for more than 10 days since the Lantern Festival. The violent emotional fluctuations were even more exhausting. Duan Jiazhuang was right in front of him. Young men holding lanterns were vaguely seen patrolling the night. A voice rose in Hong Fan's mind: infiltrate, assassinate, torture. It was rationality speaking. However, he immediately felt a strong disgust and was forced to squeeze this thought out of his mind. It was precisely because Zhan Yuanzi died in a shameful assassination. Therefore, revenge must be open and above board and witnessed by others. Hong Fan exhaled deeply, walked straight along the main road into the manor, and knocked on the door in front of the Duan family's land. Liang's Haoxiang Wen Tiki. Hong Fan wants to see Duan Lichen. In the dark night, lights lit up one by one. Those who come with bad intentions will not come with good intentions. At this time, the Tiki came to the door, and Duan Lichen knew the seriousness of the matter better than anyone else. Unlike Zhang Daoqi, he immediately made the worst plan. So the place where the two sides met was actually the Duan family's martial arts arena. Torches were crackling and dancing. "What are you doing here?" Duan Lichen asked. With the light, he could see the bloodstains on Hong Fan's knees, arms, and front. Ghosts knocking at the door in the middle of the night. "Why don't you think about your guilt?" Hong Fan laughed. "Mystification," said a middle-aged man. He was as burly as Duan Lichen, and his movements showed that he had reached the level of pure realm. Duan Lichen stopped the clansman. "You might as well speak clearly." He mustered up his last bit of luck and said, "Jiari Mansion, Zhan Yuanzi." Hong Fan squeezed out 6 words with his teeth. Duan Lichen was silent. The wind blew over the fire. The light reflected the big Duan character flag on the side of the field. The flag caught a wind again. "You are going to arrest me or kill me?" Duan Lichen asked. His momentum weakened. Hong Fan did not answer immediately. "Do you know where the 3 people from the AO family went?" he asked back. "I don't know," Duan Lichen replied. "It has come to this point. I have no reason to hide it for them." This was a sincere statement. "Okay," Hong Fan nodded. "Then I am here to kill you." The Duan family was in an uproar. Many words were heard by Hong Fan. "You are talking nonsense. He is a Tiki. Even the emperor can't do that." The voices became more and more intense until they were interrupted by Duan Lichen's rebuke. Silence. He hesitated for a moment, glanced at the clansman, took 2 steps forward, pulled open his collar and shouted at Hong Fan. "I won't fight back, just come and kill me." His bearded face had turned red. But at this point, the clan leader's words didn't count. "No," another old man with a half-white beard stepped out of the crowd. Hong Fan could see that he also had the basic skills of the first stage. "If a kid kills the head of the family in our martial arts arena tonight, it will be the backbone of our family. Why will the Duan family practice swords in the future?" The crowd was completely in an uproar. They spread out in all directions and surrounded the Tiki in the center. "What do you say?" Hong Fan asked Duan Lichen quietly. "Stop talking nonsense, just come over." A swordsman who was proficient in swordsmanship replied for the latter. Duan Lichen took the ring-backed broadsword from his tribesman. At this point, he half-heartedly rekindled his hope of survival. 1 peak level, 2 low-level level, 14 penetration, and 18 mortal archers were also threatening from a distance. Hong Fan was surrounded by 35 people. He closed his eyes slightly and sighed softly. The desert is ruthless, don't blame me. The sand-cast armor was put on. Chapter 288, Killing Spree. The bowstring of the horn bow was shocked. The rain of arrows broke the stalemate. More than a dozen arrows were all covered with sand armor, but they did not cause any damage. Hong Fan stared coldly at the Duan family members who were slowly closing in. He did not take the swords and shotguns in the latter's hands seriously. The desert sand armor was rated as the second grade in this Hangwu Academy, but that was mainly based on the duel between warriors. In a group battle where the strong bully the weak, it is undoubtedly the top. When the first sword came, Hong Fan did not dodge. The blade bit into the sand armor for an inch and a half, and the sound was mute. The swordsman wanted to retreat, but he was grabbed by the shoulder and thrown to the ground, not fatal, but enough to undermine his combat capability. Hong Fan carried out his will and knocked down the second person under another round of sharp arrows. My sand armor ignores hidden arrows and has no blind spots, he declared loudly, trying to undermine the opponent's fighting spirit. He was compassionate, but not arrogant. Before his true energy was exhausted, facing an opponent with a lower cultivation level than himself, Hong Fan was confident that he was invincible. The armor is alive, shoot his eyes, the leader of the archers responded to the order. Arrow suppression, cover the real test. Hong Fan heard several wind sounds at the same time. Duan Lichen led the front, with knife wheels on the left and right. In a breath, the enemy group advanced and retreated from all sides, delivering more than a dozen horizontal and vertical slashes. This man's armor has its upper limit, and can only defend 3 places at the same time, a Hunrin realm of the Duan family shouted, and immediately received responses from all sides. The pressure increased dramatically. Hong Fan suddenly woke up. He was not facing the mob of Shundexing, and he did not have Hong Lai and Shen Hong to protect his wings and back. The Duan family is indeed a third-rate powerhouse, and there is a huge gap between the first-rate and quasi-first-rate powers, such as the Gong family and the Hong family. These 35 people are indeed uneven in cultivation and equipment, which is a world apart from this Huai cavalry and the Honglu formation. But they are a whole connected by blood, and they are fighting for each other's lives. Just like the Jinhei Hong family. The tempo of the battle was getting faster and faster, and Hong Fan's output power of Zhenyuan had reached its limit. He raised his elbow to block a dragging blow from the front, and at the same time, he should increase the sand armor on his left shoulder and right ribs. But at the same time, a sharp pain came from his lower back. The Zhenyuan flowing in the sand armor is limited. Without the blessing of the life star, the automatic solidification of non-Newtonian fluid alone is not enough to resist the penetration level thrust. The sand armor was penetrated. A thought came to Hong Fan's mind. At this moment, he had no time to think, only the instinct of self-protection. He turned around to dissipate the force, and his arms were like whips. The gunman's neck was broken and he died on the spot. Since leaving Zijing, this was the first life that Hong Fan had taken away besides the assassins in Chori Mansion. Roars came from all directions, probably shouting the names of the dead, or expressing the anger of the living. But in Hong Fan's ears, it was like the turbulence when diving, turbid and vague. More attacks came like a tide. That's it, he said to himself. The eye slits of the helmet were closed, cutting himself off from the world. The sand fog rolled and filled the air, covering an area of 10 feet. At this moment, the sand replaced the eyes. Since there was no blood, he could kill as much as he wanted. The offense and defense were reversed. The roar of the flames and the dance of the sand. Hong Fan showed all his skills, and his killing efficiency was so high that it was almost like art. First, the archers. Then the swordsmen. Finally, the elders of the clan who were in the state of perfection. When the sand fog dissipated, the Duan family martial arts field was stained with blood and corpses were everywhere. Hong Fan could no longer maintain the sand armor, and his silk clothes were soaked with blood. There was a rolled wound on his left rib and right thigh. He stepped on the face of the old man under him and pulled the long sword without a blade from between his sternum. The 34th body was left on the field. Now we all have no armor. Hong Fan wiped the sweat that covered his eyes and smiled at the only remaining opponent not far away. Duan Licheng felt a sharp pain when he heard this. There were only 500 to 600 people in Duanjia village, and less than half of them were surnamed Duan. The more than 30 people killed by Hong Fan were almost all the young and strong men in the Duan family who could hold a knife. How could it be? How could it be? Duan Licheng murmured. A strong sense of regret surged up. He regretted not accepting the death at the beginning. He regretted accepting the threat of the Fubo gang. He regretted going out to venture out. He kept thinking, but he couldn't get over the word too late. I don't accept it. Duan Licheng stuck the big knife into the sand. I did take a detour, but I regret it. I left the Fubo gang for 8 years. Could it be that the evil ghosts can't escape hell even if they are reincarnated? He questioned Hong Fan, tears streaming down his face. Noisy, Hong Fan only replied with 2 words. Surprise, then humiliation. The cry stopped. Duan Licheng found that even his collapse was defeated. He reached out and wiped the tears from his face and suddenly pulled out the knife. Destroy the front, Duan Licheng. I swear to kill you. He rushed forward like crazy, and heard a thunder in a trance. The last look was blood flying like rainbows, and the world turned upside down. 35 corpses were lined up in a mess. The torches fell to the ground and were still burning. Hong Fan tore some clean cloth strips from the dead and bandaged the wounds. He wanted to leave the martial arts field first, but because he was too tired, he had to adjust his breath among the corpses on the ground for half an hour. Only 3, it's not over yet. This was the first thought in Hong Fan's mind after he came out of meditation. His heart was as hot as fire. But his face was even colder. His movements were more like machines. Precise and rational. Hong Fan left the battlefield and went to the back house first. He didn't find anyone, so he went to the Duan family ancestral hall. The women and children were hiding there. He only whispered a request: let the cook go to the kitchen to boil water and cook. The Duan family immediately obeyed. Half an hour later, Hong Fan had a big meal, treated his wounds with hot water, and lifted the lid of the water tank to drink water. He saw the face reflected in the jar. The eyes were red and bloodshot, and the pupils were dark, as if connected to the underworld. It was a bit like Li Hemming on the last night. Hong Fan wanted to laugh, but he couldn't, and asked the cook to take him to Duan Licheng's room. The bed was unexpectedly comfortable. He forced himself to sleep for 3 hours until dawn. When he woke up, Hong Fan's Chong meridian had been opened, and the 7th meridian Reng meridian was also 15% open. But the injury was still there, and the fatigue was not gone. He felt like an iron pot that had been steamed with water, and was being burned dry on the fire. But at least the Flame Flow True Key and the Sand World True Yuan have been replenished. With True Key, you can move and fight. That's enough. The sand wings spread out and flew over the martial arts field. There, the old, weakened children were wiping tears while dragging the bodies of their relatives. Hong Fan turned his eyes away and flew to the northeast. Chapter 289, We met and said goodbye. An hour and a half later, Hong Fan landed outside Fiming City. There were a few plump clouds floating in the sky. The stream had thawed. The roadside was full of dying snow. He took water from the stream and rested for 2/4 of an hour. When the sun was close to the middle of the sky, Hong Fan took off again and flew directly to Fiming City. Looking down from a high place, Hufu was easier to find than expected. 500 miles, 2 days and nights. The 4th team traveled day and night and was already fighting. Hong Fan circled silently in the sky, like a vulture waiting for food. He was hit by a palm, a gun, and 2 knives successively. The wounds were aching slightly. His true energy was exhausted and recovered several times in 2 days. But he had to take Huan's life himself. The golden spear danced around his body. The speed was very fast, but the power was gradually weakening. Yi Xinghe had the advantage. If I were Ao Fui, I would not let the knife in my hand know too much, Hong Fan thought. He flew down immediately. The speed quickly climbed from 80 km per hour to over 300 km per hour. The atmosphere flowed sideways, as sharp as a knife. Not enough. Hong Fan murmured in his heart. The strong wind blew at the tip of his nose, but he had to breathe. The strong wind hit his eyes, but he had to open his eyes. The dive speed exceeded 400 km per hour. At this time, Hong Fan finally turned into a free storm, able to find comfort in destruction. The battle was stopped by thunder from the sky. Yi Xinghe broke away urgently, watching the golden sand ball hit the opponent. After a loud bang, he felt Huan's breath disappear. Hong Fan, the yellow sand dispersed, and Yi Xinghe looked at the uninvited guest who was kneeling on the ground with the blood dripping from his nose, and asked hesitantly. "It's me," Hong Fan replied, trembling and getting up. More than a dozen people had died in the mansion, and Huan, who was in the realm of heaven and man, had just been added. The Sand World suddenly plundered a lot of vitality, making the Dragon Soul Tree very happy. Brother Hong, this is against the rules, Yi Xinghuo frowned. After confirming the identity of the visitor, the fourth team withdrew their guard. All the heads and military honors are yours, I don't want anything, Hong Fan said. Yi Xinghuo choked and stopped talking. The father and son of the Hua family were both dead, and there was no power to resist. He gave a wink, and his companions dispersed in the mansion, probably to do some looting. Hong Fan turned around and went to the main gate. Where are you going? Yi Xinghuo shouted. Back to Zijing, Hong Fan said without turning his head. Which one is this? Yi Xinghuo asked again. The fourth one, Hong Fan answered. The fifth one is not going, asked. It's too late. Sangxi County is due south of Zijing, and Qinghui City is due north, answer. I can't catch up. Hong Fan passed by the big cypress tree in the front yard, and thought of the scene he saw in the flashback, and his heart was unspeakable. He walked onto the street and went out of the city again. He was wearing a bright red silk dress and was covered in blood, but no one dared to stop him. There were many people on the official road. So Hong Fan left the official road and stepped onto the ridge of the field. The fields were straight. The winter wheat was trying hard to turn green. Hong Fan walked with his head down. When the road thinned into a line behind him, he felt a slight chill on the tip of his nose. He looked up and saw the drizzle of early spring falling from the sky like silk threads, covering the remaining snow of late winter. Then they melted together. Hong Fan was forced to watch this scene, and soon realized the despair in it. He couldn't help singing sadly. How many people in the world are like this? It's like spring rain meeting winter snow. We just met, but we said goodbye again. After singing a few sentences, Hong Fan sobbed and couldn't help crying. The sky was open and the earth was vast. The fields were surrounded like a prison. He found the general direction in a daze, and staggered away like a stray dog. Zijing is southeast of Fiming City. This road is 500 miles, and Hong Fan walked for 3 days and 3 nights without sleep. He waded through the river that blocked his way, crossed the ignorant hills, got wet in the rain, and was soon dried by the sun. When he arrived at the north gate of Zijing City, he was so dirty and smelly that passers-by avoided him. Relying on the red cloud pattern mixed with blood on his silk clothes, Hong Fan successfully entered the city. At this time, his Ren meridian had been opened by 35%. At the beginning of the Shen time, 3 p.m., on the 30th day of the first lunar month, Hong Fan returned to the entrance of Qinglian Lane. Looking in from here, you can see the 2 magnificent stone lions of Chaori Mansion. Hong Fan stopped and suddenly had many thoughts in his mind. Zhan Yuanzi was indifferent and free and easy. Among the people in the second team, he got along best with him. So when Yizhan asked if he might have to open the coffin and raise the body, Hong Fan could answer without hesitation. He was sure that Zhan Yuanzi would not care about these red tapes for revenge. But now? When his hands are stained with the blood of many innocent people in the Duan family, is Zhan Yuanzi still willing to take revenge in this way? Hong Fan pondered and dared not enter the Chaori mansion. After standing for a while, he turned around and left, causing everyone on the street to disperse. Only 5 or 6 children followed him with their noses pinched and laughter. Hong Fan wandered aimlessly and soon left the east of the city. After an unknown amount of time, he found himself in the south of the city. Bai Jiaxi's new home was on the side of the street. The door was open, indicating that someone was there. Hong Fan went over and knocked on the door. "Who is it?" a lark-like voice asked from afar. Soon a young girl came out. She was wearing a light green dress, with light steps and a heart-shaped bun on her head. It was Hong Li. She first smelled the stench of blood and decay, and then saw the person standing at the gate of the courtyard. The black and red clothes were mixed with knife marks and brown lumps, and the background was almost invisible. Her eyes were bloodshot and her lips were chapped. Hong Li screamed. "What are you doing?" she held a wall and asked in a trembling voice. But Hong Fan's outstanding face washed by rain quickly made Hong Li react. "Mr. Hong," she asked in a low voice, unable to believe that the man who had defeated the enemy with one sword in Mingayu Tower and carried Xianayu had become what he looked like before. Following his wife's scream, Bai Jiaxi came out from behind. Seeing Hong Fan, he was immediately relieved. "Yi Xinghuo and the others are back, but you haven't seen anyone yet. Everyone is very worried," he complained with a forced smile, obviously knowing everything. "Did you walk back?" Bai Jiaxi asked, looking at the worn-out boots of his teammates. Hong Fan nodded silently. The 3 of them went into the house. Drink some water first. Bai Jiasi scooped water from the tank with a ladle and handed it to him. Hong Fan drank it all in one gulp. Scooped again and drank again. 3 scoops in a row. After drinking the water, Bai Jiasi asked Hong Li to go out to buy clothes, and he chopped wood to boil water and prepare a bathtub. This bath took half an hour and used up 4 white flour soaps. The clothes that were taken off were directly burned as firewood, emitting black smoke. By the time Hong Fan put on his newly bought clothes and cloth boots and returned to his usual appearance, it was already dark. The 3 of them had dinner together. The food was all cooked by Hong Li, 2 large bowls with a small bowl, all with meat and vegetables on top of rice. Hong Fan didn't say anything, and Bai Jiasi didn't ask. Only when the large bowl of food was eaten up in silence did Hong Li speak. "Are the dishes I cooked to your taste?" she asked with a smile. Hong Fan was stunned when he heard it. "Very good, the chicken is very tender." Both Bai Hong and his wife laughed. Hong Fan laughed too. After dinner, they went out, and Bai Jiasi sent Hong Fan to the intersection. Ao Fu Wei, Ao Siji, Ao Hickson. Hong Fan read out the 3 names. "Anyone who sees them must be killed," he said firmly. Bai Jiasi nodded. Hong Fan added, "From now on, I will have someone send you 4 pills of Zisudan every month." Bai Jiasi was stunned, opened his mouth to speak, stopped, and finally nodded. "I'm back, please stay." Hong Fan bowed and turned to leave, but was stopped by Bai Jiasi. "Hong Fan, Liar is making braised fish tonight," he said. "Huh?" Hong Fan slapped his forehead and laughed. "Say sorry for me." This smile was finally from the heart. Chapter 290 Euphemism. February 2nd. West of Zhejiang City. Outside the side wall of Shen's mansion, a maid in a white skirt and a brocade jacket crouched down and came out from the crack of the side door. She glanced around and quickly found the person she was going to pick up. Her face was covered by a veil, revealing only her snow-white chin and scarlet lips. She was dressed in men's clothes, but her bust was about to burst out. "Is it Sister Ao?" The maid glanced at her overly flat chest and leaned forward to ask in a low voice. "Linksy, it's me," the other party replied, lifting the veil to show her true face. The two entered the Shen's mansion through the small door. "My lady thought that sister had left Zhejiang a long time ago, and she was sighing," Linksy said. Once she entered the mansion, her voice became louder. At first she left, Aos Hickson took off his veil and breathed a sigh of relief. "I came back alone from more than 1,000 miles away. I bought and exchanged horses along the way and entered the city early this morning. It's so far, and on horseback." "How hard must it be?" Linksy asked. "Given my current situation, what's the point of talking about whether it's hard or not?" Aos Hickson said with a wry smile. The Shen mansion covers a large area. As the most favored one, Shen Tixin has a 3-courtyard house with its own garden. The room next to the pond and surrounded by layers of curtains is called Fang Xianchun. Here, Aos Hickson saw Shen Tixin. Dried petals were burning in the brass stove, emitting heat and fragrance. There was simmering fruit tea next to it. The beauty was lying on the lazy couch, her white hair scattered like a waterfall. "Taizin, I'm not the same as before." Aos Hickson's eyes turned red as soon as he opened his mouth. "If you take me in, if someone finds out, I'm afraid I'll be implicated. Zio Yuer, you sent me a letter, and now you're right in front of me, and you're saying this." Shen Tixin glanced at her. Aos Hickson was a little embarrassed. "Humph, besides, this lady has never known what implicated means when working in Zhejiang," Shen Tixin said casually again. Aos Hickson was relieved and followed Linksy to bathe and change clothes. When she came back in a dress and tied her hair, the stove was filled with flower petals. The stove was replaced with heated rice wine. "So you left your father and brother to come here to find Su Pifeng? I thought you couldn't bear to leave me." Shen Tixin raised her eyebrows and asked. "Then why bother so much?" She showed a funny expression. "I'll send you to see him now. I'll arrange a carriage." Aos Hickson wanted to agree, but when she saw her friend was about to call Linksy, she hurriedly stopped him. She felt panic for no reason. "No, I won't go to see him," Aos Hickson said firmly. Shen Tixin was puzzled. "Then I'll ask him to come to see you." She changed her suggestion. Aos Hickson still shook his head. "What do you want?" Shen Tixin didn't understand. Aos Hickson sat up straight and pinched the hem of her skirt with both hands. I don't just want to see him." She hesitated for a while before speaking. "I still need to confirm his feelings first. After all, it's different now. Hickson hesitated for a while, but still didn't tell her about Su Pifang's previous breach of contract. She was actually a little scared. She had never been scared before. She wasn't scared when she saw blood, nor was she scared when she killed someone. Even the night she jumped off the boat against her father's will, she was not scared. Okay, I understand, Shen Tixin waved her hand in disdain. Your family has caused quite a lot of trouble this time, so it's better to be careful, than be more tactful. For the next 3-day banquet, you can write an invitation to Su Pifang in my name. He will always recognize my handwriting. If there is true love, people will come to you. This way, you can advance or retreat. Is it okay? She easily came up with a plan, and then took the rice wine and drank it. Okay, I'll listen to you. Hickson could only answer like this. She could see that the other party was a little impatient. Zioyuer, don't worry so much. Shen Tixin drank the wine and comforted her good sister again. It's just an unknown person who will die anyway, as long as you don't reveal your identity and don't leave this mansion. Who can do anything to you with me here? She put down her wine cup as she spoke. A light blush appeared on her snow-white cheeks. In a blink of an eye, it was February 18th. It was almost 9 o'clock in the evening. Zijingo Academy. White first, black second, four-cornered star position. Master Lu Yun knelt in front of the chessboard, holding a black piece and hesitating. The chess room was spacious, located on the second floor by the Yao River. There were more than 30 people playing and watching chess in the field, and only occasional whispers. Go is an elegant thing. To cultivate this hobby, you must not only have money but also have time, so all of them were born in a wealthy family. Master Lu Yun originally had no interest in playing chess. But after the flower appreciation meeting last year, he finally hated his recklessness, so he forced himself to learn chess to hone his character. After a long consideration, the black piece fell, making a sound of ringing jade. There were footsteps coming up the wooden steps at the same time, walking faster and noisier. Many people looked at him. Master Lu Yun also glanced over. He was about 24 or 25 years old, wearing a jade belt and a purple robe. Seeing that he had angered everyone, he bowed and sat down next to his acquaintance. Why are you here so late and smelling of alcohol? Another person asked in a low voice. Forgive me, the purple-clothed young man replied, but there was no apology on his face. I just came from the Shen family's Wuzhang garden. He raised his voice a little and gave a reason that didn't seem to be a reason. Wuzhang garden? Whose 3-day banquet did you go to? There was an immediate exclamation. Seeing the expected response, the purple-clothed man was very proud and kept talking. From the layout of the garden, the expenses of the banquet, the extravagance of the wine and food, to the unparalleled appearance of the host. Master Lu Yun curled his lips and focused on the chessboard. Until the man talked about what he saw and heard about the guest. There is also a cousin of Miss Shen at this 3-day banquet. She said she came from Hongai City, and her name is Shen Zhian. I recognized her at first sight. Isn't that Hickson? Master Lu Yun almost crushed a chess piece when he heard this. Are you sure it's Hickson? The chess moves he had calculated in his mind for more than a dozen times immediately fell apart, and he turned his head and asked. Absolutely, and I'm not the only one who recognized her. The purple-robed young man replied. With the charm of the Ao family girl, is there a second one in Zijing? It's nothing more than a red skirt replaced by a white skirt, and there's no red-faced gout following her. She is now on the evil list. Master Lu Yun's tone turned cold. Evil list? So what? The purple-robed young man couldn't stand the questioning, and shouted loudly, with alcohol gushing out of his mouth. If she doesn't take the initiative to challenge this Hangwu Academy after changing her identity, who dares to search the Shen family? After saying this, someone immediately leaned over and whispered to him. It was probably talking about the identity of the person who just asked the question as a tiki. The purple-robed young man was drunk when he heard this, and he smiled and said nothing. But Master Lu Yun's face had completely turned cold. P.S. After writing the last few chapters, I felt that my ability had increased again. Think about the comparison between Ono Hideaki's TV version of Eva and the new theatrical version. Depression may be a buff for creation. If you don't suffer yourself, how can you feel the pain of others, and how can you write about pain? Just a casual remark, please don't let me relapse. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 291 The Sky Splits. February 24th. It was past 6 a.m. Hong Fan woke up from a deep sleep and heard the sound of rain outside the window. Since he had annihilated a river-blocking ghost, his cultivation had become more profound, and he could distinguish more subtle sounds. The sound of rain falling in the courtyard was even and low, with the smell of soil. The sound of rain hitting the green tiles was crisp and solid, like moisture blowing on the face. It was outside the window. The water gathered on the eaves, shed its identity as rain, and hit the stone floor like a fountain. As soon as Hong Fan closed his eyes, a faint smell of blood floated to his nose, and he thought of the 35 corpses lying in Duanjia's Huang. He knew he couldn't sleep anymore, so he simply got up and stood in the yard to get caught in the rain. He raised his head, opened his eyes, and thought. The dark clouds were as thick as a city, and a ray of light shone from the middle. It was like the sky was cracked. The rain washed his whole body, and he came to a conclusion. It's not that too many people were killed, but that not enough were killed. Hong Fan's mind suddenly became clear. At this time, Aunt Liu walked into the yard along the rain corridor with breakfast. Jin Hai's large army returned in early February. Seeing the young master in the rain, she didn't say anything, just put down the plate and quietly prepared clean clothes. Hong Fan went back to his room to change clothes and finish breakfast. Soon Shen Hong came to report that Master Lu Yun had come. The meeting was in the inner study. The two sat down as host and guest. After the first month of the year, the situation in Zijing turned upside down. As soon as Master Lu Yun sat down, he started talking. The Fubo gang is the arm of the Liu family. Since Gu Chenxi led the team to pacify their headquarters, our State's Department is equivalent to sitting on the side of Jin Ziming. In addition, the governor's office got the real account book, and many diehards of the Liu family and the Shen family began to waver. Yesterday, I also heard that someone saw the governor's steward entering and leaving the governor's office in the middle of the night. He drank a few cups of tea and said a lot. Hong Fan only replied with 3 words in the end. What a coincidence. The hall was silent for a while. Master Lu Yun was a little hesitant. However, when he saw the picture of the Mid-Autumn Festival moon watching hanging on the wall, he became determined again. Hong Fan, there's something I don't know whether I should say or not, Master Lu Yun said solemnly. You are here and asked the question, so I really want to say it, Hong Fan replied. Master Lu Yun was stunned when he heard it, and then drank the tea in a rage. 5 days ago, I met Aos Hickson in the Wishang garden of the Shen family, he blurted out the words. There was a click. It was Hong Fan who crushed the teacup in his hand. Could it be that they look alike? He looked up and asked. Absolutely not, Master Lu Yun replied in a deep voice. She used the name Shen's Hian, but not only the appearance, but also the demeanor and voice are the same person. She clearly recognized me, but she insisted that it was her first time in Zijing and that she was Shen Tixin's cousin. Hong Fan sat up straight. Have you told the State Department? He asked. I told General Jian on February 20th, and said I would report it to the deputy. Master Lu Yun did not hide it. But it's already the 24th, Master Yun, I'm very grateful. After hearing this, Hong Fan stood up and bowed to Master Lu Yun. Not only for this news. He knew that the Lu family had fallen on hard times and was often ridiculed in the circle of aristocratic families. Not to mention how he got the invitation. Master Lu Yun didn't know how much embarrassment he had to endure just to attend the Shen family's 3-day banquet, the top gathering of Zijing nobles. It was not difficult to confirm the truth of the news about Aos Hickson. Only in the evening, Hong Fan got side confirmation from several channels. First, the other children of the Shen family, including Shen Yubo and others, have never mentioned that they have such a beautiful cousin for so many years. Second, the Shen family has no relatives in Hongai City. Third, Dahua does not marry people with the same surname. Since she is a cousin, how could she be surnamed Shen? Too straightforward arrogance is exactly Shen Tixin's style. After dinner, the rain stopped. The spring came back and the temperature dropped sharply. Hong Fan sat alone in the house for a long time. The brown wooden floor was soaked in the moonlight and turned blue. It looked as if it was frozen and had a biting cold. He didn't know why Aos Hickson didn't leave Zijing with his father. But it didn't matter. This was an opportunity that could not be missed. The next day, February 25th. Hong Fan went to the Hangwu Academy to meet Jian Xian and asked about Ao's Hickson, but didn't get a reply. It's not that the State Department didn't care about his attitude. In the afternoon, Gu Taining later found Hong Fan to explain. Now is a very special situation. I hope you don't worry. The department must have an explanation. Hong Fan didn't say much. He himself is a person who is good at doing things and can understand the difficulties of the superiors. But this is the only thing that Hong Fan can't wait for. A few days later. Chori Mansion Martial Arts Field. Thunder sounded for who knows how many times. The long sword flashed and cut through the wind. Hong Fan only did two things these days, one was thinking, and the other was practicing sword. The progress of his cultivation allowed him to push his instant steps to the limit. Especially the accuracy. A bucket of water was poured 10 meters away, and now Hong Fan could cut off a designated drop of water with one knife. At noon, Tao Hong came to call the young master for lunch. Hong Fan washed his face with water, left a martial arts field, and passed the gate of the side courtyard. The broken doors and windows have been restored to their original appearance. The Lingshu sword is enshrined in the house. As usual, he lit 3 incense sticks and observed a moment of silence. There was freshly killed river fish for lunch. Hong Fan ate it with big mouthfuls like chewing wax, his mind never stopping. In the past few days, he has thought about every aspect. But to kill Ao's Hickson, there is a hurdle that cannot be circumvented no matter what. The ancestor of the Shen family, the master of the earth list, Shen Moi. For Hong Fan, the celestial being is an absolute force with the ability to overturn the table. There is only one way to deal with it. That is to get the support of another celestial being. February 29th. The spring equinox has passed, and it is 5 days before Qingming. Zijing, Heishi, 9 p.m. Hong Fan was led by the doorman into Su's private residence. Su Guinian was from Guzhou and lived alone, so the size of his residence was only similar to Chori Mansion. Of course, the geographical location was much better. This was the first time Hong Fan met him in private. In the outer study, Su Guinian was wearing the uniform of the admiral, with a high bun tied with an iron hairpin, and he looked very majestic. If he was just meeting with subordinates, it would be too formal. Hong Fan bowed and went in, and saw another person at the table. It turned out that Su Guinian was meeting a guest. The guest was an old man, who looked to be about 70 years old, and was dressed comfortably and simply. His hair and beard were gray, but his body was strong. He held the teacup steadily in one hand, and there was no sense of old age at all. Sit here, Su Guinian pointed to the empty seat diagonally opposite. His name is Hong Fan. He came to Zijing last summer. Now he's the most capable techie under Gu Taining, he said to the old man, but did not introduce him to Hong Fan. Mr. Su is overthinking. How could I not know the reputation of the Star Lord of the Sand World? The old man smiled. But I didn't expect Mr. Su to be willing to meet him at this time. It shows that he thinks highly of him, he added. It's not that I think highly of him, but this kid is really outstanding, Su Guinian replied, pouring a cup of tea for Hong Fan and pushing the table over. When Jin Ziming fabricated the Wang Nikkei case earlier, I didn't want to be used as a gun, so I carefully considered it before deciding on a strategy. I didn't expect that later I heard that there was a techie who thought out all the key points of it, exactly the same as me. Since then, I have looked at him differently. Chapter 292 Hearing Thunder in Silence. Hong Fan heard this and guessed that it was Wu Hongling who told Jian Xian, who probably told his immediate superior. He took a sip of tea. The tea leaves were very good and well brewed, and it was impossible to tell that it was the work of a god. I see, the old man nodded and looked at Hong Fan carefully. No wonder I often heard of his reputation later. With such a good knife, how could I not use it? Both of them laughed. Then, Su Guinian turned to Hong Fan. What can't be said in the department during the day? Why come here so late? He asked. It's a private matter, Hong Fan replied, glancing at the third person. Don't worry too much. Mr. Wu Zheng and I are frank and honest, and there is nothing we can't talk about, Su Guinian said boldly. Hong Fan had never heard of Mr. Wu Zheng, but he felt that the old man's eyebrows and eyes were a little familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen him for a while. But since Su Guinian said so, he naturally had nothing to worry about. Admiral, please allow me to report, Hong Fan bowed. I found an important criminal hiding in the Shen family in Zijing. Su Guinian was stunned when he heard this. Tell me more about it, he added, glancing at Mr. Wu Zheng. Ao's Hickson, The mastermind behind the assassination of the second team of the Tikizan Yuanzi, is now hiding in the Shen family under the name of Shen Tixin's cousin Shen Zhian from Honggai City. Hong Fan finished speaking in one breath. The sound of insects came in through the window. Both of them looked surprised. But Hong Fan knew very well that Gu Taining had already reported this matter to his superiors. Could it be a mistake? Su Guinian asked with a frown. Aos Hickson showed up at the 3-day banquet, and many people saw him, Hong Fan replied immediately. Nonsense, Mr. Wu Zhang scolded. He seemed to know immediately that what Hong Fan said was true. Su Guinian was silent for a moment. Aos Hickson has been included in the list of evils, and he is a person that Jiao's Hangwu Academy must kill. He first determined the nature, and then looked embarrassed. Hong Fan, you must also know that Liangzhou is in the midst of a transformation, and the situation is very complicated. I will never tolerate the AO family, it's just for the sake of the overall situation. The State Department can't deal with this matter now, do you understand? This sentence seemed to be said to one person, but not to one person. Su Guinian didn't expect Hong Fan to be calm and responded immediately. I understand. So I chose to come to pay a visit at night, he replied. I'm not asking the State Department or the governor to deal with this matter immediately, then why did you come to me? Su Guinian asked curiously. Hong Fan answered irrelevantly, I will personally take action, attend Shen Tixin's 3-day banquet in March, and kill Aos Hickson on the spot. This was beyond Su Guinian's expectations. He had a strange expression, holding back his laughter, and glanced at Mr. Wu Zhang beside him calmly. And the old man was obviously interested. This is a big tone, but how are you going to do it? He asked curiously. If there is a dangerous place in Zhejiang City, besides the Hangwu Academy headed by Mr. Su, it is the Shen family. As far as I know, Shen Tixin is the apple of the eye of the Shen family, and she has always been surrounded by innate guest guards. What right do you have to kill people at her banquet? The old man asked repeatedly. This is my business. Hong Fan refused to say more. Su Guinian mocked him. If you can do it, why do you come to me? I said in advance that it is impossible to send someone to help you now, and it is impossible to agree to let other people from the State Department participate in this matter. He thought Hong Fan would be embarrassed. But the latter was not surprised. I hope to get the protection of the Admiral afterwards, Hong Fan replied. If I do this, it will inevitably anger Shen Tixin and even the ancestors of the Shen family. Therefore, I hope the Admiral can help me calm down the storm afterwards. Su Guinian suddenly realized. What do you think, sir? He looked at Mr. Wu Zheng. Very good, repaying kindness with kindness and revenge with hatred, the old man nodded. As long as the plan is well planned, nothing is impossible. Seeing this, Su Guinian could no longer hold back his smile. Haha, that's what I mean too, he stroked his beard. You want to settle the matter for the State Department on your own, and I naturally support you. It's just that our relationship with the Shen family is not settled yet, so we can't give you a direct answer. How about this? You sit in the wing room over there and wait. There will be another distinguished guest coming over later. When he comes, we will discuss things and give you an answer. It's also my apology gift to you. Su Guinian pointed to the calligraphy and painting room at the other end of the outer study. Hong Fan had no objection. He sat down obediently on the chair in the wing room on the left. Not long after, the world changed. It seemed that an invisible curtain had descended in the room. The sound of insects in Hong Fan's ears gradually disappeared, and his perception was also compressed. But his vision was still normal. About 2/4 of an hour later, another middle-aged man in luxurious clothes came in. Strangely enough, Hong Fan had never seen this man before, but he felt that his features looked familiar. The visitor did not notice Hong Fan in the side room, and sat directly opposite Su Guinian. The two sides began to talk. Although they were only more than 10 meters apart, Hong Fan could not hear any sound, as if he was no longer in the original world. The three people chatted, but they were not on the same page, and there was a hint of tension. Hong Fan saw Su Guinian shook his head. Then, Mr. Wu Zhang moved. He pressed his palm on the middle-aged man's shoulder. At this moment, the invisible curtain covering the calligraphy and painting room was blown open. Hong Fan still could not hear any sound, but he could feel the drastic changes in the vitality of heaven and earth. At the moment when the middle-aged man in brocade clothes was tense, almost endless true essence was spread out in all directions. The innate spiritual energy echoed with it, like the arms of the sky and the arms of the earth. In comparison, The power of Hong Jian and Shilin in the second battle was just so-so. However, this move was not used after all. Immediately after Mr. Wu Zheng, Su Guinian also made a move, and with a palm straight out without any fireworks, he killed the middle-aged man. With a snap, the latter leaned back on the chair, already a corpse. In an instant, the sand world sensed a huge amount of vitality. This was a situation that Hong Fan had never encountered before. The nutrients released from the dead were so much that the life star only collected a small part of it and was full. He immediately realized that the middle-aged man was a master of the Yuanzi level, and was definitely not a weak one. And this was exactly the gift that Su Guinian mentioned. What happened just now? Hong Fan asked himself. His mind was in chaos. The curtain covering the side room completely dissipated. Only then could he hear the voice from the other side. Sir is indeed a trustworthy person. This is what Su Guinian said to the old man. How dare you play tricks in front of Xianji Hengdun? The latter replied. The two stretched out their hands and shook hands, looking at each other and laughing. Okay, Hong Fan, come here, Su Guinian called. Now I can give you an answer. Hong Fan walked over slowly, still in an indescribable state of shock. You can do what you just said, Su Guinian said in a relaxed tone. But let's make it clear in advance. Since you are going to do it in the Shen mansion, and you are going to kill the cousin of the Shen family's daughter, this will greatly damage the reputation of the Shen family, so there must be a back and forth. We can't just go and not return. He looked at Mr. Wu Zheng, using a negotiating tone. You can do it at the banquet, but whether it succeeds or not, you have to come back in a carriage, while the carriage is on the road. If the Shen family kills you, captures you, and kills your helpers, it is a tooth for a tooth, and I can't help. Similarly, whether it succeeds or not, even if you burn Wuzheng Garden, as long as you can return to Xiangwu Academy, I will take care of everything for you in the future. Su Guinian waved his hand with great pride. Wuzheng Garden Hong Fan was alerted when he heard this, and he could not care so much for a moment, and hurriedly thanked him. By the way, this matter and the gift tonight are considered as a favor you owe me, and you have to pay it back in the future, Su Guinian said at last. Hong Fan nodded and left. The study door was closed. There was no one around. The residence of a powerful celestial being does not need guards. Hong Fan took a deep breath and walked down the stairs. After a few steps, his whole body became weak and he was forced to lean on his knees with his hands and breathe heavily. He could not help but recall what had just happened. Then he completely realized what had happened. The dead middle-aged man was a master of Yuanzi, and a piece of jade on his body carried the family emblem of the Liu family of Zijing. This person can only be Liu Xingxin's father, the 87th place on the Earth list, the 100-armed king, the first master of the Liu family. Liu Rui. Hong Fan swallowed his saliva. As for Mr. Wu Zheng, the white beard and hair are probably not due to old age, but to the practice, and the place where Shen Tixin held a banquet was called Wuzheng Garden as expected. He was the 31st on the Earth list, once Hang Ningbing, the ancestor of the Shen family. Shen Moi. No wonder I saw these two people familiar. The changes in the situation in recent months, as well as the countless details of the whole thing tonight, were strung together, and it was as if a lightning bolt exploded in Hong Fan's mind. Mr. Wuzheng said that Su Guinian was willing to meet me at this time, which shows that he values me. This time does not refer to the night, but specifically tonight. He understood it completely. Before tonight, Zijing was full of twists and turns, and the core was that the Liu and Shen families joined forces to fight against the governor's office and this Hangwu Academy. And tonight, it was the night when the Shen family switched sides. It was the night when Shen Moi backstabbed Liu Rui. It was also the night when the dust settled on the struggle between Liang Zhao and Haoxin. Thinking through all this, Hong Fan's eyes were blurred and his ears were buzzing, as if a silent thunder that turned the world upside down exploded in the dome. Huh? He suddenly exhaled a foul breath. I came back to my senses. The surroundings were silent except for the chirping of insects. It was as if nothing had happened. P.S. My thoughts are so vast that they connect to the universe, and I hear thunder in the silence. Lu Soon. Chapter 293, Establishment. The 4th day of March, Qingming Festival. Early in the morning, shortly after dawn, the world was still blurry. In the martial arts field of Chori Prefecture, Hong Fan was practicing the Yanliu Gong Foundation, building fist for the hundreds or thousands of times. After a round of punches that seemed light but was actually heavy, with muscles and bones ringing, he was sweating slightly on his back. As of today, Hong Fan's Ren Meridian has been completely opened, and the Du Meridian has been opened by nearly 90%. Liu Rui's fallen vitality allowed him to break through a complete small realm. This is also about the upper limit of a single plunder in the Sand world. A few more rounds of punches. Hong Fan's clothes were soaked with sweat. Within a month, he is sure to reach the peak of the wholeness and the realm of small looklessness. At that time, the instant step will be able to move at will, and it will become more and more unstoppable. The morning exercise is over. The sun has risen completely. The sky is like a blue sea, and the clouds are like mountains, stretching and floating above the high walls and roofs. Hong Fan stood silently for a moment, waiting for his heartbeat to slow down, and then went to take a bath and change clothes as usual. In the past few days, the city of Zijing is still undercurrent. He originally wanted to wait for things to ferment before taking further action, but what he waited for was still strangely calm. It was as if Liu Rui was not dead yet. But Liu Rui was 100% dead. This was what Hong Fan saw with his own eyes. Martial arts masters often practice in seclusion. A Yuanzi master does not show up for 6 or 7 days, and others may just think it is normal. But Liu Rui is not alone, and visiting Su Mansion that day could not be a personal decision. At least Liu Xiu must have guessed that his brother's disappearance, was related to Shen Moi and Su Guinian. Thinking of this, Hong Fan swallowed the porridge and sighed. In this situation, it is clear that his loved ones died at the hands of others, but the governor of Liangzhou has to help conceal it. This is the cruelty of reality. Pretending not to know, the Shen and Liu families can still save face and go their separate ways. If they insist on exposing it, Shen Moi will have more stains in his life, but the Liu family will have an enemy who is at the top of the earth list. Liu Xiu is not stupid and knows this truth. So does Hong Fan. He was a well-known smart man. So that night, neither Su Guinian nor Shen Moi said a word to him about keeping secrets. After finishing breakfast, Hong Fan rode out on Honky. Passing by the fatty's bun shop, the tiger-eating beast stopped in familiarity, called softly, and stretched its long face under the oilcloth shed. The shop assistant was not afraid to see him, and said good morning, Master Hong, and then stuffed 2 thin-skinned and large-filled buns into Honky's mouth. The tiger-eating beast chewed fiercely with its steel teeth, shaking its head as it ate. Do you want some, Master? They are all freshly made, 70% lean meat and 30% fat, the assistant asked again. Hong Fan smiled and waved his hand. The buns were of course on account, and the boss would settle the bill every month at Chori Mansion. The owner patted the horse's neck, and the horse started to walk. Half a quarter of an hour later, they arrived at the Kazojian. Hong Fan came too early today. And the boy did not lead him to the office study in the front, but went straight to the residence of Feng Zhuangliren at the back. A cramped and exquisite tea room. The floor was covered with reed mats. There were no chairs, only a few cushions. The two knelt across the low table. Hong Fan told the purpose of his visit directly. He and Zhuangliren no longer needed to be polite. From Zhanyuanzi and Aos Hexen, all the way to the 3-day banquet, Wuzhang Garden, and revenge. He told everything. Zhuangliren was no longer smiling after listening. He digested it for a long time before speaking. We have known each other for less than a year. Although we are friends regardless of age, in my eyes, you are better than others who have been together for 5 or 10 years. Hong Fan, whether you want me to help you make marrow cleansing pills or firearms, it doesn't matter, you have rare talent. No matter what you want to do, the Weaponry Bureau and even Dahua will only benefit more from it, but it won't work this time. His tone was earnest and deep. I can imagine how you feel about avenging your best friend, but that's the Shen family. Zhuangliren shook his head and stopped talking. Can't the State Department fight against the Shen family? Hong Fan asked calmly. It was not provocative, nor was there any resentment. It was just an ice-cold inquiry based on absolute rationality. But Zhuangliren could hear the fire burning under the ice. It doesn't matter whether the State Department can fight, he shook his head and replied. At least I, Zhuangliren, can do it, and I'm not afraid. If they want to touch you, even if Shen Moi comes, I have never killed anyone or seen blood, but I can draw my sword. If I can't stop them, there are still 5 magic saints behind. The voice was high-spirited. In addition to the high-spiritedness, there was also iron-like determination. But now it's you who want to touch them. Zhuangliren slammed the table. Hong Fan, let me make it clear, for me, for the Weaponry Bureau, your personal safety is the most important, whether you like it or not. In my eyes, this is 100 times and 1,000 times more important than whether your friend's grievances are avenged. He stared into Hong Fan's eyes. I can do anything for you, but I can't let you risk your life, the voice spread in the tea room. Hong Fan did not refute. He has always been a reasonable person. And Zhuang Liren is the same. On February 29th, I went to see Suginian at 11 p.m. Hong Fan seemed to change the subject. In his study, I saw him receiving Shen Moi. He quickly and coherently told what he saw and heard that day. He even told the process of the two celestial beings joining forces to kill Liu Rui, the 100-armed heavenly king. Zhuang Liren immediately understood the huge weight of this secret. He was also a smart man. What Hong Fan wanted to express was very clear. The core figures of this Hangwu Academy and the Shen family had a tacit understanding of this matter. Hong Fan's assassination of Aos Hickson was probably a game of chess between the two celestial beings. So much so that Su Guinian said that he owed him a favor. Favors from dead people are useless. I see. Zhuang Liren was silent for a moment, revealing a look of understanding. I just received an invitation. Su Guinian will hold a banquet in 3 days. I heard that the guests include Jin Ziming, Shen Moi, Zhou Buzheng, and Zhu Ensha. He replied with a message. It seems that there will be no one from the Liu family. After this banquet, the overall situation in Liangzhou will be settled. He spoke slowly, his face softened. In that case, it is indeed not as dangerous as I thought, but you are going to kill someone in the Shen mansion after all, including you. The murder of Liu Rui was originally known to at most 4 people, and you told me, so you have to do it, Zhuang Liren asked with his last fluke. I have to do it, Hong Fan answered immediately. Okay, Zhuang Liren sighed. Well, I will help you, he smiled helplessly. If you are arrested and Shen Moi refuses to let you go, I will go to see him and threaten him with his betrayal. If he doesn't let you go, I will make him a laughingstock in the world. Zhuang Liren's tone was like telling a joke. But every word fell into Hong Fan's heart, as hot as molten iron. Duke Zhuang, he called out in a low voice, took a step back on his knees, and bowed forward. Zhuang Liren quickly pushed aside the low table, straightened his back and helped Hong Fan up. No need to do this, no need to do this, but no matter whether this succeeds or not, don't let it happen again, he patted Hong Fan on the back and said in a gentle voice. Chapter 294, Fighting Shura. March 7th. Tongguang, Liangzhou. People are coming in and out of the Chalcedony mine outside the city. Carriages loaded with goods are flowing on the street. Everything seems to have returned to the time before the incident in Huaiyang State. It is even more glorious than then. The Gong family is also full of vitality. On such a day when everything is competing, the top master of Tongguang, Guangheng, the dark tide and gloomy day, received an urgent letter. The letter was sent from Zhaijing through the authority of the Instrument Bureau through an express channel of 600 miles. It was still sealed with Zhuang Liren's wax. Guangheng naturally took it very seriously. He closed the doors and windows of the study, unfolded the letter, and found that it was written by Hong Fan. The more he read, the more worried Guangheng's brows became. Father, what's wrong? Seeing this, the young Gong Pu next to him asked curiously. Guangheng just remained silent. That night, the top leaders of the Gong family held an emergency meeting and discussed for a full hour. The next morning, Guangheng rode out of the city alone and headed east. The destination is Zhaijing. On the 10th day of March, the hour of yin was about to pass. The sun rose high, pouring out all the flowing clouds. It began to drizzle. Wearing a bamboo hat and flying a red flag, Hong Fan left Zhaijing Ending Gate and headed for Xiangping Mountain Shura Sect 20 miles west. He caught up with a large convoy. The convoy had big flags with the word Liu at the front and the rear. There was only one famous Liu family in Zhaijing. 2 days ago, Hong Fan heard a shocking news in Liangzhou. Liu Xiu resigned from his post and the Liu family moved to Boyang City. They were so anxious that they didn't even have time to deal with many family properties. I didn't expect to meet them on the road today. The convoy was moving slowly, and Hong Fan didn't want to follow behind, so he went around from the side. The rain here was slightly heavier than in Zhaijing. He saw that the men of the Liu family were all wearing straw raincoats, leather armor and swords underneath. In the center of the convoy, the only luxurious carriage that retained the family emblem made the sand world feel a sense of induction. There should be a star god sitting inside. It can only be Liu Hong, the second best of the Liu family, the star master of the Yuanxi realm, and the star master of Weiminghow. It is said that Weiminghow can continuously heal friendly troops on a large scale and recover injuries and physical strength at a high speed. Like Su Mingtong, he is also not good at individual combat. But no matter what, now is obviously not the time to make friends. Hong Fan accelerated his horse and met another old acquaintance in front. Liu Rui's legitimate son Liu Xingxin. He was wearing muddy leather boots and a straw raincoat. The silver-threaded robe inside was half wet by the rain, and it was hard to tell how many times he had worn it. The convoy was carrying too much cargo, and there was no place for him, Hong Fan thought, and his mind emerged with the other party's arrogant look in Mingayu Tower. It seemed like a long time ago, but it was actually only half a year ago. Liu Xingxin happened to turn his head. The two looked at each other and looked away. "Go," Hong Fan shouted in a low voice. In Liu Xingxin's eyes, this person and this horse, together with the old days of boiling oil, disappeared. In the afternoon, Hong Fan arrived at Xiangping Mountain and asked to see Chuyi. The latter was not arrogant. Hearing that the person coming was Hong Fan, he arrived quickly. As of February of the 29th year of Zheng, Chuyi's cultivation had advanced to the innate 5-1, and he was ranked 10th on the Xianjiao list. "Hey, Hong Fan, you look like someone has died in your family." This was the first sentence that the little dowdy said when he came in, which broke all Hong Fan's plans. He couldn't say that. "You guessed it right. This is for you, as a congratulations on entering the top 10 of the Xianjiao list." Hong Fan was speechless for a moment, and had to push the souvenirs he brought over. They were not expensive things, but some local delicacies of Zhejiang. "You make it seem like it's difficult to get into the top 10, Chuyi sat down on the side, and without being polite, he opened the paper package on the spot and tasted them one by one. "This pastry is okay, but this date cake is not," he commented while eating. Hong Fan waited quietly until the other party finished eating. Chuyi finished his food, licked the crumbs from his lips, and clapped his hands. "Okay, so what do you want to talk to me about?" he asked. "I need your help with something." Hong Fan took a deep breath and got straight to the point. "It's about murder, and the killing is for revenge," he said, and then told the other party everything about Zhan Yuanzi's death. It was both a statement and a review. Of course, excluding the part about Liu Rui. Chuyi listened with interest. When Hong Fan talked about killing 4 assassins in a row, he cheered easily. Until the end, Hong Fan mentioned that Aos Hickson hid in the Shen family and visited Suginian and Zhuang Liren in turn. "The next 3-day banquet will be on March 30th. I want to kill her in Wisheng Garden, and I want you to protect me." Chuyi finally put away his smile after listening to the whole thing. "I'm good at fighting, and you're right to ask me." He touched his chin and hesitated. "But a meal of cakes is not enough." Hearing this, Hong Fan took out a note first. Hong Fan borrowed 1,000 taels from Chuyi. The handwriting was crooked. It was the IOU that Chuyi wrote when he visited the brothel. Hong Fan tore up the IOU and burned it to ashes with his Yan Liu Jin. "Brother Chu, please help me with this matter. What money or things do you want?" 10,000 taels, 20,000 taels, 30,000 taels, but please name your price. As long as I have it, as long as you want it, just ask." He spoke decisively. Chuyi nodded, then glared at Hong Fan, and finally couldn't help but burst out laughing. At first he laughed crazily, and then laughed wildly. In the end, there was only hideousness in this laugh. It was as if the shapeless skin and flesh had been torn off, revealing the bones burning with phosphorus fire underneath. "You want me to help you, okay?" Chuyi suddenly spoke, and his eyes looked at Hong Fan, with a gleam of brilliance in his eyes. "There are many brave and aggressive people in my Shur sect, and 7 out of 10 of them will not die a good death. Outside Xiangping Mountain, the first and second generation dowdy buried in the 2 peaks are incomplete." He laughed, without any respect for superiority or inferiority. "I am not short of money, but I am short of friends. Friends who are willing to wrap my body and bury me when I die in the wild, and take revenge on me." "Hong Fan, are you willing to be my friend?" Chuyi asked, extending his hand. Hong Fan took it without hesitation. "Okay," Chuyi shouted. "The Shura in the fight never cares about rules and reason. Since you are my friend, just tell me the time and place, and don't talk about right and wrong. I have a share in murder and arson." March 15th, the night is getting deeper. There are still 15 days before the next 3-day banquet. The best box in the Hong family's Xingsheng Hall. The table is in a mess. The second jar of 10-year-old fire jadeite was drunk up. A concubine, the son of the Shen family, picked his teeth with a toothpick and carried an expensive gift down the stairs. Inside the room, the sound of the river waves rose and fell. Hong Fan sat back in his chair, staring at the full moon outside the window in a trance. Now that the invitations have been obtained, what are you going to do? Master Lu Yun asked across the table. No answer. Hong Fan, he spoke again, his voice getting louder. Remember what you said to me. A little impatience can ruin a big plan. This time, Hong Fan finally turned his head. I am calm and more patient than ever before, he said with a smile. There was even a special joy in his words. You are going to kill Aos Hickson, right? Master Lu Yun was dissatisfied with his friend's evasion and stood up to ask. Hong Fan still didn't care. Master Yun, I have my own ideas. There is only one thing, you don't have to go to the 3-day banquet this time, he added. You still say you are calm, Master Lu Yun sighed. I am really calm, Hong Fan still smiled. I told you not to come because I was afraid that you would be reckless. After he finished speaking, he walked across the round table, shook Master Lu Yun's hand heavily, and then went out and left. Master Lu Yun stayed alone in the wing room. After a moment, he made a decision. Chapter 295 3-Day Banquet. March 30th, the 29th year of Zen. The setting sun melts gold, and the evening clouds merge into jade. It's dusk. The air is clean and dry. It's a good time to kill people. Hong Fan watched the copper furnace burn the last 3 incense sticks, and took the Lingshu off the altar. He wiped it carefully and inserted it into the newly matched Lingxiu sword sheath. Shen Tixin's 3-day banquet generally does not allow weapons, but decorative ones can be brought. Hong Fan took the sword and left the yard. He heard the friction sound of armor leaves coming from the side garden, and nodded to Hong Lai and Hong Bo who were standing at the entrance of the yard. He changed into a newly made silver silk killing robe, cloud-patterned satin boots, and a Tongguan jade hairpin crown on his head. In the front yard, Chulei and Gong Heng were waiting. The carriage stopped at the door. Tang Dajie held a horsewhip in his hand, his black clothes were straight, and he lifted the curtain. The 3 got on the carriage one by one. Amid the bumps, the carriage left Kinglian Alley and went to Shen's mansion in the west of the city. In the main seat of the carriage, Hong Fan sat with his sword on his hand, without saying a word. The atmosphere was very tense. Gong Heng did not come here voluntarily. Since arriving in Zijing, he has re-evaluated the pros and cons more than once. The Shen family is really not a force that the Gong family can afford to fend. It's just that he can't afford to fend the weapon factory. The carriage left the 6th cross street. Gong Heng's thoughts were full of mixed feelings, and his breathing was also disordered. Chu Loi glanced over. Hong Fan, where did you find this uncle? He is so old and still breathing heavily. Will he be a drag when the time comes? He asked. Hong Fan raised his eyes, smiled and shook his head. Gong Heng was slightly angry. He didn't know Chu Loi. But thinking about the purpose of this trip, this thin young man who looked plain must have his extraordinary qualities. It's inevitable to be afraid of the Shen family in Zijing. Excuse me, Gong Heng showed his ability to endure humiliation. Then he heard Chu Loi sneer. You are afraid of the Shen family too, so you are afraid of a lot. The voice was calm and serious. It seemed that he was not deliberately provoking, but really didn't take the Shen family seriously. Chu Loi really has the capital to support his attitude. He has inherited 2 generations of Daodi. There are also 2 high-level Shinran in the sect. He is famous all over the world and is considered a strong candidate for the first place in the future Xianjiao list. The Shen family, which is like a behemoth in the eyes of others, is just so-so in the eyes of the little Daodi. Gong Heng, who didn't understand, couldn't stand it anymore. May I ask your name? He sat up straight and asked in a deep voice. Chu Loi from Xiangpeng Mountain. Chu Loi lifted the curtain and looked at the Xianzhen bridge outside, and answered casually. Gong Heng opened his mouth, bent down, and resumed silence. He felt a sense of frustration that he had nowhere to talk back. But his wavering mentality stabilized instead. It is terrible for the Gong family and the Hong family to face the Shen family together. However, when the Gong family and the Hong family, as well as the Shur sect, the Weaponry Bureau, and this Hangwu Academy face the Shen family together, it feels, oh, quite easy. Excuse me. Gong Heng said self-deprecatingly, and put his hands in his sleeves. The carriage has arrived. The alley outside the Shen mansion was much wider than that outside the Chori mansion, but it was still crowded at this time. Hong Fan and Chu Loi got off the car and heard someone behind them calling him. Young Master Hong. He turned around and saw Gong Heng bowing slightly in a cross-legged posture. May your military fortune prosper, a blessing from the best master in Liangshao West. Hong Fan and the other person followed the crowd into the Shen mansion. 8 warriors in heavy armor blocked the way ahead, and 2 gatekeepers greeted them with a smile. Hong Fan handed over the invitation. The gatekeeper took it and glanced at it. "When I saw your appearance, I was guessing in my heart, it's really young Master Hong," he said. This was Hong Fan's first time here, but the other party's attitude was like that of an old customer. Being well informed is the basic quality of doing this business. "Young master, this sword?" the gatekeeper asked again. Hong Fan pulled out the Lingshu without hesitation. A broken sword with several notches on the blade, scarred and ugly. When Xiu swords are not sharpened, but this one is undoubtedly sharpened. It's a family heirloom, and it's no longer usable. "Just use it as a ceremonial vessel," Hong Fan said with a smile. The doorman nodded and let him in. Chuloi was stopped next. He didn't have an invitation. "You can't bring guests to my banquet," the doorman smiled at Hong Fan, who looked over. Unexpectedly, Chuloi put his hand on his shoulder. "You know him, but you don't know me. What kind of person is it to come to the door and not even know me?" Chuloi frowned and shouted. The doormen of the Shen family have always been domineering, not to mention that there are heavy armored soldiers beside them. But they were all stunned by this sloppy young man for a while. What kind of person dares to say this at the door of the Shen mansion? "May I ask your name?" the doorman asked carefully. "My young master Chuloi of Xiangping Mountain. Can I enter this banquet without an invitation?" As soon as the name came out, there was a deep silence around. "There are a total of 100 people on the list of Xianjiao, and I have never heard of anyone who dares to impersonate. Do you recognize me now?" The doorman nodded repeatedly. Chuloi patted him on the shoulder and went straight inside to catch up with Hong Fan. The Shen mansion did not arrange a reception. Because a red carpet was laid all the way from the main gate to the banquet hall, it couldn't be more striking. Wuzhong Garden is said to be the best garden in Zhejiang. The corridors are winding and the scenery is vivid. In the middle is a small square paved with white marble. The square is paved with long tables on 3 sides, on which are placed 1,000-layer cakes, dragon beard cakes, water chestnut cakes, and a pot of unknown but definitely expensive wine. The seats are cushions. There are no nameplates on the tables. In theory, first come first served and free choice, but in fact, everyone knows what position to sit according to their status. Except for the 2 newcomers. Hong Fan came out of the rain corridor and chose a place in the middle of the west seat, regardless of whether he knew them or not, based on his field of vision and the distance from the upper seat. Chuloi sat down next to him. About half of the people at the banquet had not arrived yet. Hong Fan knelt upright, with one hand on his sword. Chuloi supported his right knee and ate and drank. The young man on his right showed disgust at his crude behavior and left the table to change seats. This happened 3 times, and more people came to the venue. Chuloi had already drunk 3 pots of wine, and his already unrespectable demeanor became even more casual, even taking off his belt. Hong Fan carefully observed while warming the meridians and strange veins with the Yanliu true qi that had reached its peak. To the east of Wuzhang Garden, there stood a rockery in the pool. On the top of the mountain sat a swordsman in white. Hong Fan already knew this man. Yan Xingjin, a guest of the Shen family, had the innate 2-in-1 cultivation level and was nicknamed Flying Swallow Chasing the Star. He was also one of the main obstacles to this operation. Soon, the guests arrived, including all the aristocratic surnames in Zhejiang. By typing, Zhang Wenbei and Lin Yongcheng were all there. Hong Fan had no interest in greeting them, and they dared not provoke them. At the top, Aos Hickson looked around, scanning the guests again and again. She was disappointed again. Su Pifang still didn't come. There was an endless stream of young men coming to the banquet to make friends with Shen Ziyan. Aos Hickson had a beautiful smile on her face, but her heart seemed to have fallen into the abyss, rolling and choking in despair. Hong Fan lowered his head, did not drink a drop of wine, and just stroked the sword again and again. He knew that Aos Hickson was looking at him, so he did not dare to look up to meet her gaze. He was like a hunter who was afraid of scaring a bird. Shen Hickson finally arrived late. The 3-day banquet has 3 themes: martial arts, music, and poetry. Today is the first day, and the theme is martial arts. P.S. The setting sun melts gold, and the evening clouds merge into jade. Yonggao, Li Kingzhao. Chapter 296, Fire and Ice. Just as the food and wine were served, several pairs of young warriors were already challenging each other. This was the most prestigious fighting arena in Zhejiang, and the audience included the most outstanding nobles and beauties in Zhejiang. At the beginning, Bai Taiping and Palangdao both challenged Aos Hiji here. White deer seat, the one with a green robe and a bun, what's your name? Shen Tixin's voice sounded like an icy spring. Red tiger seat, the one with a white robe and a black collar, what about you? Okay, the first match will be yours. Her words were full of laziness and willfulness. The two young men responded and saluted the leader. The cheers were loud and loud. Left and right, go and get Duangsha and Figuang. Shen Tixin waved his hand. Two heavily armored warriors brought swords. On the wine table, the energy was directed in all directions. Soon, the white-robed warrior won. I will give you the Figuang sword. Shen Tixin glanced at him, leaned his head on Aos Hickson's shoulder, and casually gave him a famous weapon worth more than 100 taels of silver. Many warriors who racked their brains to find a way in were trembling with excitement. A victory at the three-day banquet would not only be a stepping stone for advancement. If one could win the favor of the white-haired beauty at the top, wealth and honor would be within reach. More people clamored to fight. If one could not win, it would be nothing more than a loss. In such a big city like Zijing, who dared to kill someone in Wushang Garden? Not long after, the second duel also had a result. Shen Tixin was indulging in the beauty of being slightly tipsy, but saw a guard leader hurried over to report. Miss, the weapons supervisor Zhuangguang is here. Shen Tixin was full of surprise when she heard this. Why are you telling me about this? She asked back. I didn't call him. Zhuang Liren was not in her social circle. Generally speaking, when the chief supervisor came over, either the ancestors should be told or the head of the family should be told. There was no reason to find an unmarried legitimate daughter. No, Miss, Zhuanggong said he was coming to the three-day banquet, the guard leader said. We dare not stop him. Shen Tixin frowned when she heard this. She had seen an old man coming from afar in the corridor at the end of Wushang Garden. He was actually carrying a sword. Shen Tixin was about to reply when she heard some movement below. It was the teacher who stood up with a wine glass in his hand. Jinhei Hongfen, excuse me for disturbing you all. The noise subsided. The name Hongfen is very famous in Zijing. Especially after the Liu family lost power, it became a legendary name. Everyone stopped what they were doing and wanted to see who this man would challenge. Bai Taiping, who was defeated by him with one sword, was also in the scene. Hongfen walked to the center and stood facing the moon. I entered Zijing in April last year and met my friends on Yuanzi. We served as Tiki in this Hangwu Academy together. He smiled with tenderness in his nostalgia. My friend is indifferent and leisurely. He kills evil with a sword in his left hand and paints with a brush in his right hand. Everyone was puzzled when they heard this. But Hongfen walked forward slowly, talking non-stop. In May, we took down the money house together and captured Xiao Shangfei and Man Shuang. He bowed to several He family members. In July, Mingyu Tower. We watched the flower appreciation meeting together. He looked at Zhang Wenbo and Bai Taiping. After seeing this, the former had to pee urgently, and the latter even had the urge to jump into the pool. In September, still in Mingyu Tower, we captured Wang Mingke. He raised his glass to Lin Yongcheng. In December, at Daokeo Street, we fought Aos Hiji together. Hong Fan's smile turned cold. This year's Lantern Festival, my friend Zhan Yuanzi died in an assassination. He looked around at everyone, and finally fixed his eyes on Aos Hickson. The latter looked at him without flinching. There was silence in the field. Hong Fan poured the wine in front of him. The wine shattered like beads, wetting the white marble. Aos Hickson, do you dare to recognize your name? He asked loudly, his voice as cold as ice. There was no more gossip in Wushang Garden. The white-clothed swordsman on the rockery raised his eyebrows and stood up. Hong Fan, what do you mean by this? Shen Tixin was furious and slammed the table and yelled. She hadn't been so angry for a long time, and it made countless hearts tremble. Many people who wanted to curry favor with the powerful were about to take action when they saw Hong Fan holding a sword. Miss Tixin, please forgive me, he said with a smile. I have a strong desire to kill and I can't suppress it, Hong Fan replied. His voice was low and fierce, like fire and ice. As soon as these words came out, it seemed as if a heavy snow had fallen in the Wushang Garden. At this time, Hong Fan was only 5 feet away from Aos Hickson, who was sitting at the top. The sand wind suddenly rose, dancing and swirling. His eyes were slightly closed, and his body was like a bow. The killing intention of the person holding the sword was like dark clouds covering the sun and the sea boiling. Everyone's heart was shocked. On the other side, Yan Xingjin on the rockery was also ready to go. He was proficient in the flying knife of the true essence, and Hong Fan was within his range. Until Zhuang Liren strode over. He stood beside Hong Fan, not saying a word, just blocking the attack angle of the guest queen. Yan Xingjin had an ominous premonition in his heart. He was forced to withdraw his attack and planned to fly in. At this moment, Hong Fan took a breath from his dantian, and his tongue burst into thunderous sound. Blood for blood, heaven and earth shall witness it, thunder roared. He leaped 5 feet away. Dragon roared in the sky, Ling Shu's broken sword was unsheathed, the scarred blade cut through the wind and kissed the enemy's neck. In Aoxixin's eyes, the moment when the world fell was so long that she silently recited Su Pifang's name 100 times. Ling Shu was suspended and frozen. The starlight in the sky was reflected on the sword, just like the new rain outside Fiming City, bidding farewell to Kangsu. The head fell, and the broken neck was resting on the sword. There was no fear in Aoxixin's wide-open eyes, only sorrow. It seemed that her heart had died before the sword came out. The whole audience was stunned. Then he was awakened by the sound of Aoxixin's headless body falling on the long table. Zhang Wenbo swallowed his saliva. Bai Taiping touched his scalp. Lin Yongchang's palm burned. "How dare you?" Yan Xingjin roared, half shocked and half angry. He was shocked that someone dared to kill people in Wishang Garden. He was angry that the attack just now was so fast. Like a rainbow piercing the sun, a hawk flying, and he couldn't stop it. He rushed towards Hong Fan. Zhuang Liren also drew his sword. A few steps forward, he blocked the two again. Yan Xingjin was forced to slow down and dared not move. He had been in the Shen family for many years, so he naturally knew the true identity of Shen Ziyan. It was a big deal that someone died in Wishang Garden. But compared with attacking the chief supervisor of Liangshao Instruments, this was a trivial matter. The situation was deadlocked. The audience was shocked by Hong Fan's audacity. The children of the aristocratic families, including but not limited to Shen Bai, Zhang Lin and he, all had their eyes firmly glued to Hong Fan. They may not know this Tiki from the border town, or they may have hatred, resentment, or disdain for him based on their family status. But from now on, this feat of revenge for a friend and bloodshed in Wishang Garden will become an unforgettable scene in their lives. Crunch, crunch. Chu Loi chewed the pork bones in his mouth and stood up suddenly. His clothes were spread out, his chest was exposed, his ribs were lined up, and he was as thin as iron. Now that the man is killed, should the garden be burned? He wiped the remaining wine and oil stains from his mouth and asked. Hong Fan shook his head. Then let's go. Chu Loi patted his stomach and burped. Hong Fan nodded and tied Aoxixin's long hair to his belt. He shook off the blood on the blade, put the sword back into the sheath, saluted to Zhuang Liren, turned around and strode away. Blood dripped all the way from the severed head. For some reason, countless people present were overwhelmed. Chapter 297 Farewell. At this time, Shen Tixin finally reacted. Stop, she screamed hysterically. What are you all standing there for? Go ahead, take him down, she shouted to the guards. The Shen family guards gathered around. Zhuang Liren immediately used his eyes to force them, holding a sharp sword, blocking the route to chase Hong Fan and the others. In the end, no one dared to move. Shen Tixin's status was high, but it was definitely not high enough to make the Shen family fight with the chief supervisor of the weapon production department on his own initiative. Hong Fan did not stop. Chu Loi stopped and turned back, pointing his long arm. Shen family lady, we will take the carriage later, there is no rush, I'll wait for you to send someone to chase. He laughed in a low voice, with a green light in his eyes, ferocious like Shura. Shen Tixin was afraid to move when he saw them. Seeing the two figures walking away along the rain corridor, Zhuang Liren returned the sword to its sheath. But he did not leave, sitting down in the seat where Hong Fan sat before, pouring himself a drink. The banquet could no longer continue. Shen Tixin didn't dare to look at the headless corpse lying on the ground, and she had no way to deal with Zhuang Liren, so she could only glare at Yan Xingjin, and left the table angrily with her skirt lifted. She first went to find the ancestor, but the ancestor was gone. She went to find Grandpa, but Grandpa was gone too. It suddenly started to rain. Shen Tixin had to do it herself. It was like spring. Several innates in the Shen family were soon called by Lingxi. Shen Xingzhao, the peak of innate, Shen Tixin's uncle, was just beating his son. Shen Filin, the fifth innate, Shen Tixin's aunt, was just taking a bath. Shen Yubo, the second in 8, Shen Tixin's brother, was just being beaten. In addition to the second in 8 and Yan Xingjun who had just disgraced his mission, there were a total of 4 in 8s. Uncle, and, the ancestor and grandpa won't see me. Shen Tixin swept the teapot and cup to the ground, and her white clothes, white skirt, and white hair were splattered with Aos Hickson's blood. Hong Fan killed Xiao Yuer, and he brought people to scare me. She grabbed Shen Yubo's sleeve again. At this point, Shen Tixin's eyes flashed with the instant step flying slash and Chuloi's arrogant gaze. She pursed her lips and finally couldn't help crying. Catch him back for me, catch him back, the most beautiful woman in the world, one of them, threw herself on the soft couch, crying with snot and tears. Catch him back, her screams passed through the heavy curtains and were drowned in the increasingly heavy rain. When Hong Fan stepped out of the eaves of the Shen mansion, his silver silk kiln robe was already half wet. The rain was like a fine thread, connecting the sky and the earth. He looked up, but could not see any clouds, as if the rain came from nowhere. The dark black carriage stopped in front of him. Guang Heng lifted the curtain and glanced at the head tied around Hong Fan's waist. The beautiful and pale cheeks were wet by the rain, as if crying silently. Hong Fan nodded and bent down to get in the carriage. Then it was Chuloi's turn. The carriage drove out of the alley. The Shen family is in the southwest corner of the west city of Zijing. The Zhangwu Academy is in the northernmost part of the east city. This journey will be a long one. The wheels rolled and bumped on the stone road. Chuloi leaned against the window, not caring about the raindrops that occasionally came in and wet his hair, and actually fell asleep under the influence of alcohol. The snoring was intermittent. Hong Fan listened carefully, and his mind became calmer. The rain was very heavy, so there were no pedestrians on the street, and the vendors had closed their shops early. The carriage went up Kyoxi Street, and the outline of the whale rider appeared vaguely in the distance. At this time, Hong Fan heard a majestic voice. Shen Xingzhao of the Shen family, please stay, Mr. Hong. Along with the voice came the bone deep cold. A layer of bright silver frost, like curled fingers, crawled in from the window. The snoring stopped suddenly. Chuloi still had his eyes closed. As if he was dreaming of a happy event, he grinned silently, revealing a row of neat white teeth. The curtains rolled up. No one was seen. Xianpeng Mountain Chuloi is here. A rebellious laugh came from outside the car and quickly faded away. Just to see the Shen family's Bingpodian methods, the sound waves went against the rain, sweeping half of the city. Hong Fan grabbed the curtains and cast a look. He saw the rain curtains on the city lifted, and in the density variation, a line of white waves pressed like a wall. The green shadow broke through the air and smashed the ice. Snap! Tang Dajie usually cherished the horse, but at this moment he couldn't help but whip Bentley. The carriage successfully got on Xianzhen Bridge. The rain was as dense as fog, half covering the light gray bridge rocks. The car seemed to be walking on the water. The coldness caught up again. Hong Fan heard a fine breaking sound from under the wheels. It was like a boat breaking through the ice. Shen Filun of the Shen family, please give me a favor. The voice that followed was a mature woman's. Hundreds of ice spikes shot out from the side. Guang Heng sneered and slapped the table with one palm. Extreme Yin Yuan rose from the outside of the car, protecting everything. Guang Heng, I've been waiting for a long time. Guang Heng nodded to Hong Fan. His eyes were deep purple and he flew out the window. The world was quiet for a while. Bentley drooped his mane and pulled the car with all his strength, walking onto Kayadong Avenue. It was still a long way to the Zhangwu Academy. Just after passing the first intersection, there was a change. In the atmosphere, water vapor was forced to condense, reflecting the skylight, like diamond stardust. Shen Yubo, the Shen family, I'm sorry, the young man's voice came from afar, with a bit of honesty. Ice mist seeped into the car. Hong Fan felt heavy in his heart. He took a deep breath and took out a sword from the secret compartment in the car. The blade was short and light, and the sword guard was bright yellow. It was the Xuan-level magic weapon Jun and Song. Old Tang, slow down, Hong Fan called out, holding a sword in his hand. He was nervous, relieved, but not regretful. He was about to get off the car to fight, but suddenly felt a shock. The curtain of the car was lifted 2 inches. A burly man sat next to Tang Dajie and stretched out a calloused hand. Lend me your sword, the voice was so familiar. Hong Fan looked up and saw Shi Yuan Wei in a purple silk robe. He understood instantly and couldn't help but feel his eyes hot. Did Master Lu Yun drag you into this? Master Lu Yun listened to Hong Fan's words and didn't attend the 3-day banquet. But he didn't do nothing, but sent 3 urgent letters to the Shenjing's Hangwu Academy. What do you mean by dragging you into this? Shi Yuanwei asked back. Isn't Brother Zhan my colleague? He looked at Hong Fan, half reproaching. Why are you talking so much nonsense at this time? Shi Yuanwei grabbed the dagger. With a dragon roar, the man was gone. Outside the window, the sky and earth flashed. A shout came from afar, piercing through the heavy rain. I am Shi Yuanwei, the lightning-fast man. Please teach me. Shu Fen. The ice and snow disappeared. The carriage continued to move forward. Tang Dajie pushed Bentley to the limit. There was at least one more flying swallow chasing Star. The carriage turned from east to north and drove on the last leg to the State Department of the Zhangwu Academy. A wide and straight road. The destination is at the end. Yan Xingjin caught up alone. He was dressed in white and holding a sharp sword. He didn't intend to disappoint the master twice. I am Yan Xingjin. He shouted his name like the first 3 people. Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by heavy arrows coming from 3 directions. Form a battle array. The scorching war roar like a furnace broke through the heavy rain and came up. 30 red-clothed riders, each with heavy armor and shields, holding iron bows, and wearing bright red smocks, guarded the carriage. It was like a wall growing out of the flat ground. A mob. You want to stop me? Yan Xingjin said contemptuously, running at high speed on the roofs of the street. His martial arts are good at clever projection. Facing ordinary heavy armored army formations, innate warriors have their own ways to win in chaos. After dodging 2 waves of arrow rain, Yan Xingjin kicked and poured his true energy into the tiles. After the tiles, a sword energy flew and chopped. He wanted to make a gap. However, the formation of the red-clothed cavalry did not move at all. Facing the terrifying flying tiles, the 4 Hong family members did not blink, and still drew their bows and shot arrows, allowing them to smash into their bodies. As for the sword energy, Hong Shi took it with his steel shield. Yan Xingjin immediately realized the quality of these 30 heavy armored soldiers. They have solid cultivation, are well-trained, well-equipped, and have tacit cooperation, and they are dead soldiers. Under the cloak is steel armor, and it is top-grade black iron armor. Yan Xingjin gritted his teeth secretly. After all, he is a powerful man from the border area, so brave. Several more waves of arrow rain swept by. Bentley panted and did not stop. It was a warhorse that had seen the world. Yan Xingjin knew that it was a losing strategy to fight against 30 steel-armored warriors. He was about to attack, but he felt that the circulation of his true energy was slightly delayed. The arrows are poisoned? He hesitated again. The long street was more than 100 meters long. The copper lion about 10 feet high at the entrance of this Hangwu Academy was clearly visible. Hong Fan is a Tiki, and today he is avenging his colleagues. He wants to seek shelter in this Hangwu Academy? Yan Xingjin guessed. The sword energy and the arrow rain were still fighting. But the majestic rain suppressed everything. The city fell into the water. Washed the world into silence. In the vastness, Yan Xingjin saw the gate between the red walls in the distance slowly open. It didn't seem like seeking shelter, but rather a welcome. At this moment, he seemed to feel that on the red high wall, there was a monkey-faced eagle-winged Xingshi statue every 3 meters, staring at him with lightning-like eyes. The will to fight melted like a bubble. Yan Xingjin no longer attacked in vain, but just followed perfunctorily. The Zhangwu Academy was right in front of him, but the carriage stopped in front of the gate. The last pursuer was also forced to stop. The heavy rain had soaked his whole body, forming a water line at his chin. The innate master was a little at a loss. The red-clothed cavalry reorganized the formation. Hong Shi, Hong Lai, and Hong Bo led the way, each urging their own pure realm cultivation. The flame flow gathered with them as the core, surging and magnificent, and actually steamed out a cavity in the heavy rain that embraced the world. The white gas was like fog, but it could not block the 30 pairs of eagle-like eyes in it. Hong Lai nodded to Hong Bo. The latter took a few steps forward, drew out his horizontal sword, and slashed it horizontally on the bluestone slab in front of him. Metal and iron passed over stone, sparks flew everywhere. Anyone who crosses this line will die. The voice was fierce, like a lion's roar. Yan Xingjin swallowed his saliva, feeling humiliated. But there were 327 Guantong, and 30 people in formation on the opposite side. There was only one consequence of forcing through. The carriage curtain was lifted. Hong Fan got off the carriage. He was dressed in cloth, which was lighter than armor. Mr. Yan, if you want to move me, you have to do it now, he turned around and asked. Yan Xingjin clenched his 5 fingers. The red-clothed riders laughed arrogantly, enjoying his silence. Thank you for seeing me off, Hong Fan bowed from a distance and returned to the carriage. The carriage drove into the Zhangwu Academy. The gate closed. The red wall divided the world in the rain into 2. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 298, Declaration of War. April killed March, and there was the first day of April. Su Mansion in Zijing. The servants retreated to the roadside, lowered their heads in fear, and bowed to the young master. The burly man held his fiancée and strode across the path. It was not until his figure turned the corner that they dared to reach out to fan the stench from their mouths and noses. The Fu Bo gang had disappeared. The Ao family was nowhere to be found. Since Hong Fan had defeated Shen Tixin, how could the Shen family respect Ao Tixin's body again? Before dawn today, she was covered with a straw mat, transported out of the city on a cart, and thrown into a mass grave. When the news reached the Su mansion, Su Pifang went out without saying a word. Is he the only person Ao Tixin can count on? He was unwilling to answer this question until yesterday. Today, the answer was engraved into his flesh and blood. The door of the house was wide open, and it was not closed when he left. There were 2 invitations on the table, signed by Shen Tixin, but not in Shen Tixin's handwriting. The curtains of the bed were hooked up with golden hooks. The white quilt was brand new, and she had never slept on it before. Su Pifang bent his knees and carefully put Ao Tixin down. It had only been 7 hours since Hong Fan's beheading last night. The weather was still warm in late spring, and the body had not yet decayed. What lingered was the stench of blood. Su Pifang seemed not to notice. He sat still by the bed for a moment, feeling uncomfortable in his heart, then went to the closet to get a piece of brocade handkerchief and covered Ao Tixin's broken neck. The pain was even more obvious. You obviously left, but you insisted on coming back. This is none of my business, Su Pifang complained in her low voice. He turned his eyes away and tried to defend himself in his heart. He talked about those things. He was despised at first, then manipulated, and finally ordered to leave everything behind and follow her. Su Pifang's heart was indeed filled with resentment. But this resentment was so clear that it had been washed away by time. The great red-faced god was at his wits' end at this moment. Resigned to his fate, he took out a broken gold chain from his arms, tore it into 2 pieces, and put them on their wrists. Holding his fiancée's cold hand, Su Pifang tried to recall her face. In a trance, he seemed to have left the cramped room and saw Ao Tixin's younger years. She was outing in the mountains. She was laughing in the tavern. She was dancing under the bright lights. Then, a discordant voice came from the door, shattering this illusion. Young master, Su Pifang turned his head and saw the housekeeper of the Su mansion and his maid Yanran. Young master, the master wants you to come over, the housekeeper bowed slightly and said at the door. It seemed that the room was too bloody and he didn't want to come in. Su Pifang stood up, his expression as heavy as a sculpture. Go to Chori mansion for me to issue a challenge. 3 days later at 5 p.m., I will fight to the death with Hong Fan on Xianzhen Bridge. He walked in front of the housekeeper and said vaguely. Master, this? The Ao family has fallen, and she is about to commit a crime. Yanran was immediately anxious. She said everything in her mind. Before she finished speaking, Su Pifang had already pinched her neck. With a snap, her cervical vertebrae broke like a reed. Did you hear what I said? The body of the maid fell to the ground. The housekeeper was frightened and turned pale. He just wanted to call the bastard of the Su family. Unexpectedly, there was only the red-faced god on the yard. I understand, the housekeeper said in panic and fell to the ground. Su Pifang no longer cared about him, closed the door, and went back to the house. Xiao Yuer, you always like to wear red skirts, even the last one, you have to dye it yourself. Laughter came from behind the door. The people outside the door were so scared that their hair stood on end when they heard it, and they rolled out of the yard. On the same afternoon, the sun shone on the slightly wet streets, and the fragrance of green buds and soil rose. Yesterday's heavy rain washed Mingayu Tower beautifully. With such a big incident, Shen Tixin's 3-day banquet could not be held. Therefore, Wangjiang Alley was full of guests today. The east wind blew from the Yao River, rolling the dancers' hair. The skirts spun, and flowers bloomed on the carpet. In Mingayu Tower today, a name was everywhere in the wind. Hong Fan, Bai Taiping drank the strong wine. He didn't know how many times he had imagined the knife last night in his mind. So fast, so fierce. Even the family heirloom seemed to be nothing more than this. I can't believe it. Who would have thought that he would dare to kill people in Wishang Garden? Zhang Wenbei sighed. Zijing is so big. This is the first time I have seen someone who dares to offend the Shen family like this. Many people at the table nodded. Brother Zhang, it's not that mysterious, right? Lin Yongcheng replied, rather disapprovingly. Hong Fan is a tiki, but he has Su Guinian, the head of the Wuhan, to support him behind him. That's easy for you to say. Bai Taiping glanced at him. Since July last year, he had heard countless times people around him say bad things about Hong Fan, and he often participated in it. But for some reason, he felt particularly offended when he heard this sentence today. If you become a tiki, you will be protected by the gods, so you can offend the Shen family? Why don't you try to be one? Bai Taiping said sarcastically, and then poured himself a drink. The wine seemed to be stronger. The knife in his heart seemed to be faster. I can't take it. He lowered his head and suddenly sighed. What did you say, Brother Bai? Zhang Wenbo didn't understand and asked. I'm talking about Hong Fan's instant step, Bai Taiping replied calmly. The first time, my scalp was cut off, and the second time, Ao's Hickson's head was cut off. Speaking of this, he didn't feel ashamed. Not only that. What a noble and elegant demeanor, a literary style. Now thinking about it, even he himself finds it funny. A dignified family, holding gold and purple. When a common man gets angry, blood splashes 5 steps. After Bai Taiping finished speaking, he seemed to be unsatisfied, and simply grabbed the wine pot and poured it all down his throat. There was a sigh at the table. Only Lin Yongcheng was still unconvinced. I think you brothers overestimate him. He picked up a piece of beef tendon and chewed it. Shen Tixin was splashed with blood, and I heard that he was scared and cried. When has this lady suffered such a loss in all these years? I think this matter is not over yet. The Shen family can't just let it go, Lin Yongcheng said decisively, but he didn't get the response he imagined. Yongcheng, you went out early and didn't know. It was Zhang Wenbo who replied. As for what happened at noon, it is said that Shen Tixin has been confined by his family. Then Shen Guoying went to the Hangwu Academy to visit Su Guinian in person. This time, the Shen family should have admitted defeat, he concluded. This, Lin Yongcheng was speechless. Yongcheng, don't think about some things anymore, Zhang Wenbo advised. Hong Fan is not the only one who dares to splatter blood 5 steps in Wishang Garden. It was Chuloi who accompanied him to the table last night, and it was Zhuang Liren who blocked the sword for him. I heard that he also used Dark Tide and Lightning Flash. Hong Fan is really a man who cannot be provoked, Zhang Wenbei concluded, and gestured to the waiter to add more wine. Bai Taiping suddenly added a sentence. Although he cannot be provoked, it's good to be friends. Even Lin Yongcheng couldn't refute this. At this time, the noise downstairs rose, gradually overwhelming the string and bamboo. Su Nunu's reached this table. 3 days later, Su Pifang asked Hong Fan to fight to the death at Xianzhen Bridge. He just sent a challenge, everyone exclaimed. Brother Zhang, I'm sorry. After a moment, Bai Taiping suddenly said. I may not be able to go to your sister's wedding in 3 days. The other people at the table were moved by his words, and obviously had the same idea. Seeing this, Zhang Wenbei waved his hand violently. I have more than one sister, and my sister may not have only one wedding. He stood up suddenly. The most important thing is to send someone to book a room for the whale rider first. P.S. What is the nickname of Hong Fan on the Xianjia list? It's urgent and critical. Please give me some advice, don't say desert just cause. Chapter 299, Alienation. April 4th, the beginning of summer. The vitality is vigorous, and the sunshine is getting longer. All things are busy practicing their own ways. After a few days of sultry rain, the termites that were driven out of their nests grew wings and flew around the house. Birds chirped on the eaves, not wanting to miss the rare meal. Children who didn't know sorrow yet held slingshots and nets in their hands, coveting the birds. At the hour of you, the sun just began to sink, and the world was still bathed in light. Today's Zijing city is not as lively as before. The streets and alleys are empty, and the people are all gathered on both sides of the Yao River. It is not uncommon for Xianjiao to take action in Zijing. But it is the first time in many years that someone has openly promised to fight to the death. The heavy and noisy voices suppressed the two ends of Xianzhen Bridge, and when they spread to the river, they turned into a misty and thin veil, covering the center of the bridge. Hong Fan arrived early. He had no obligation to fight. But perhaps because of the same identity, or perhaps because of the same mood, he still came. A quarter of an hour later, Hong Fan saw his opponent. At the bridgehead in the west of the city, Su Pifang parted the crowd, like a sharp boat breaking through the waves. He strode onto the bridge with a narrow coffin on his shoulder. After being washed by heavy rain, the rocks of Xianzhen Bridge were spotless. However, near the center of the bridge, a thick sand blanket was laid. The Yao River is deep and the bridge deck is high, so Hong Fan arranged the venue in advance. Su Pifang didn't care about these. He walked straight to the bridge, put down the narrow coffin, and half pushed open the coffin lid. An indescribable stench floated out. Hong Fan frowned and looked over. 4 days after the incident in Washang Garden, Aos Hickson had become a giant. Su Pifang seemed unaware and took off his coat, revealing his upper body with distinct muscles and like a sculpture. He gently covered the person in the coffin with his outer robe, pressed his left hand on the bridge railing, and lowered his eyes for a moment. The violent force came from his fingers. The relics left by the martial saint were extremely hard, and some stone powder was still ground out. Then, Su Pifang faced the coffin and solemnly tattooed his face with 5 crimson fingers. He finally turned to face his opponent. "Thank you for coming." Su Pifang walked up to Hong Fan and looked down at him. There was blood on his face and hatred in his words. It was not like he was looking at a person, but more like he was looking at fate. "You're welcome." Hong Fan looked up and looked back, saying softly. The sand flow sucked in from all sides. He put on sand armor in public until he was 2.5 meters tall, and looked down at Su Pifang in turn. The latter laughed, loosened his special belt, and also showed a giant spirit. Boots exploded, trouser legs tore. From inside to outside, from bones to muscles, everything was growing and expanding. In a breath, Su Pifang's muscles were knotted like armor, and he grew from 2.1 meters to 3.5 meters. The sand-cast warrior only reached his chest. The golden chain on the giant's wrist broke, and he turned his hand to grab it and carefully put it in his trouser pocket. "Please," Su Pifang said in a low voice. The sound faded, and the riverside fell silent. Hong Fan nodded, put his right fingers together to form a knife, and unceremoniously stabbed his opponent's ribs. Gravel crumbled. The blow that could penetrate the bull's head only broke the skin and could not penetrate the opponent's external oblique abdominal muscles. At the same time, Su Pifang gathered strength to throw a swing punch. The air sobbed. Hong Fan stood firmly and raised his left arm high. The fist bone was imprinted on the arm armor, and there was a bang. Most of the thick sand layer collapsed, and Hong Fan's body was knocked crooked, so that the right fist that was ready to counterattack could not be thrown at all. His strength exceeds mine by several times. Thoughts floated to the sea of consciousness like bubbles. In a blink of an eye, Su Pifang's second uppercut arrived. Bang! For the first time in his life, Hong Fan was head into the air in the state of the desert sand armor. After just a face-to-face fight, he had to retreat. The quicksand armor solidified and covered, and Hong Fan escaped from the back. Su Pifang raised his arm and swung, breaking the sand shell, and stepped forward to follow up with another punch. Hong Fan stepped back quickly, wiping the blood dripping from his nose with his thumb. His body paused. It turned out that his heel hit the edge of the bridge. "Come and die!" Su Pifang leaped up, clenched his hands into a hammer, and smashed down heavily. Hong Fan rolled sideways to avoid it. Xianzhen Qiao took the blow for him. Fortunately, the relic of the martial saint was extremely hard and unmoved. The giant spirit turned around, his eyes red, like a stream of fire. He saw that his opponent had pulled 2 feet away, so he started to chase. He took a step forward, and something strange happened. The sand received the order and flowed like water. Su Pifang's feet slipped and he lost his center of gravity. Hong Fan was waiting for this moment. Jun Enzhong was lifted out from his feet by the sand waves. He grasped the hilt of the sword, turned the blade, his eyes focused, and instantly took a flying step. Amid the thunder, the two men crossed. The elegance of the knife almost made Bai Taiping's soul leave his body. "Good knife, good cut," Su Pifang smiled. The blade that should have cut his throat was blocked by his forearm. The muscle broke 2 inches, revealing the white bones behind. At the broken end, blood spurted out like a knife and cut into the sand. But it only lasted for a blink of an eye. As soon as Su Pifang thought, the muscle fibers proliferated and connected with each other, restoring their functions and compressing to stop bleeding. In the state of giant spirit, his control over the body has been refined to the limit. Thundering instant steps, seeing is believing, Su Pifang grinned, revealing 2 rows of sharp white teeth, and said with a grim smile. Before he finished speaking, he stepped down. The absolute brute force pushed away the sand layer and shook out a bridge surface about a foot wide. The giant spirit rushed head-on, like a mountain collapsing. Hong Fan raised his hand and fired a series of fire cloud palms. Since he entered the realm of Xiao Wulo and martial arts, he has been able to launch his moves without any delay. But Su Pifang didn't care. He blocked his face with both hands, ignoring his charred skin, and crashed through the flames. A roar resounded through the middle of the river. The giant kicked the sand like 1,000 arrows. After a snap of his fingers, countless sand balls were captured by the sand world again and hovered as a curtain. Open, Su Pifang swept his palm across and blew up the sand world. After that, Hong Fan was no longer there, above? No, behind him. Su Pifang listened to the wind to determine his position, and as soon as he turned around, his torso was pierced with pain. More than a dozen sand shotgun shells penetrated the smoke and dust, all hitting. The curtain fell. Su Pifang looked down at himself, chuckled, and opened his arms to Hong Fan. At the wound between his ribs, the sand balls crawled and twisted like leeches, but could not penetrate the muscle armor. The skill is like the person, what a true saying, he shouted loudly and stretched out his 10 fingers. A moment later, his palms like cattail leaves clashed with all his strength in front of his chest. The sound was loud but inaudible. Hong Fan found it difficult to describe what he heard. He only saw the air vibrating like water waves, and his eardrums stung like needles. Before the shock subsided, a cannon punch enlarged in his field of vision. He staggered, tilted his head, and ducked. The fist tip grazed Hong Fan's cheek. At the same time, Jun and Song's silver blade slashed across Su Pifang's right leg. Both of them were bleeding, and the distance between them had entered the inner circle. Come again, the giant exhaled and shouted, turning around and hooking his fist. Facing the strong wind, Hong Fan seemed to be a weightless piece of paper, and he sacrificed himself to the ground. Su Pifang saw this and laughed fiercely. He punched the air, raised his leg, and was about to step down. General, the sound was like thunder, stopping the moving clouds. Huangsha came to the rescue. Inside and outside the battle group, with the giant as the center, golden currents converged, entangling the ankles, supporting the soles of the feet, pulling the waist and hips, blocking the joints. Su Pifang felt like he was trapped in a net for a while, and he couldn't step down with his kick. Chapter 300 Impermanence. Blood flowed from the corners of Hong Fan's eyes. He had never output a true essence of the sand world so explosively. Duck, he pointed his right sword and uttered a sound. The sand knife shot out diagonally and hit the opponent's hanging left calf. The buzzing sound spread across both sides, which made Jiang Wenbo shudder. This time, the defense of the giant spirit was no longer effective. The golden sand line pierced Su Pifang's calf, bringing out powdered bone residue. A painful groan. Then, Hong Fan heard the soul-stirring sound of drums. It was the heartbeat of the giant spirit. Ha! With a long roar, Su Pifang pulled another 3 inches of his body. Cracks appeared in the solidified sand. Hong Fan's hair stood on end and rolled out. The bridge surface shook. The foot finally stepped down. A dust storm rose. The giant spirit's wounds spurted out misty blood, staining the surroundings. 2 feet away, Hong Fan slowly got up, panting. Since the beginning of this fight, every fight has been at the limit of his reaction and output ability. So much so that the boundary between life and death and time are blurred. The sky is full of sand falling like rain. Su Pifang, covered with the wounds, turned around and looked. There was a tooth-grinding sound of bones rubbing against each other. Hong Fan looked in the direction of the sound and saw the muscles wriggling at the wound on the opponent's left calf, forcibly fixing the broken tibia. Su Pifang's steps were like thunder and he pressed forward again. Hong Fan, you are tired, he said in a hissing voice, and the giant spirit phase's true energy was active. But the red-faced god will not be tired. The oppressive attack came like a wave. Hong Fan moved around, surrounded by danger, and seemed to stubbornly inflict useless blows. After more than 10 rounds of intense fighting, he cut 4 more bloody wounds. But if you defend too long, you will lose. After cutting the 5th wound, Su Pifang seized the opportunity to punch. Hong Fan's sense of distance has always been excellent. So far in the battle, he has long been familiar with the opponent's striking distance. Step back, this punch will stop half an inch in front of my chest. Hong Fan's mind was like ice, and his thoughts flowed through it like a clear spring. Then, he watched Su Pifang's joints dislocate on their own, and his arm span suddenly increased by 3 inches. At the limit, Hong Fan twisted his waist and moved, but it was still not enough. The fist bone was imprinted an inch into the right shoulder. The sound of bone cracking was dense. Jun Enzhong threw high into the air. Su Pifang had already seen the chance to win, and with a roar, he stepped forward and punched down. In a moment, countless ways to dodge flashed through Hong Fan's mind. The time was too short, and reason was no longer enough to rely on. So, his nature, which was usually wrapped in various thoughts, was exposed, and he chose to go straight into the fight. He twisted his foot horizontally to stop his retreat. Hong Fan turned around and flew to meet the incoming punch. Su Pifang was absolutely sure that he had hit his opponent. However, it felt like hitting the wind. The opponent's rotation lined speed in the same direction as the punch almost eliminated all the force. My turn floating in the air, thinking. Hong Fan stretched out his left arm, put it on Su Pifang's wrist, and used the force to lift up. In a moment that was too dazzling to see, his toes stepped on the back of the giant's hand. His fist hit the rock face. Xian's Nkyo did not move at all, and even had the strongest recoil. Su Pifang was unable to restrain himself and froze for a moment. Taking this opportunity, Hong Fan stepped forward and leaped to the giant's shoulder, supported his hands and flipped over, catching Jun Enzhong in midair. The knife flashed, and he spun around and landed. Hong Fan retreated 3 steps, suppressing the pain with deep breaths. Under the tattered clothes, his shoulder was swollen and dark blue. The sound of a broken string suddenly sounded at this time. Su Pifang's back burst into blood, and a knife wound more than a meter long appeared. This was the result of Jun Enzhong's previous battle. With the help of the Life Star, Su Pifang checked his physical condition in an instant. Most of the right latissimus dorsi and trapezius muscles were broken, and the rhomboid muscles were slightly injured. Blood flowed down like a waterfall, dyeing half of the giant's body bright red. In the fierce battle so far, he had shed a bucket of blood, which was difficult to measure. With the activation of his true energy, the broken flesh immediately twisted together and restored basic functions. It's just a knife wound. Su Pifang turned around and stood up, but he felt dizzy before he finished his statement. This made him feel unfamiliar with his body. Since the Fate Star entered the position, he never felt tired once he activated his ability. Unless the true energy is exhausted, the giant's physical strength is endless. How did you do it? Su Pifang was stunned for a moment and looked at Hong Fan. Jun Enzhong is a poisonous blade. The poison is called impermanence. It is forged into the metal blade and does not need to be quenched again, Hong Fan replied. A martial artist who has penetrated the sword only needs 1 knife to survive for half an hour. I have been waiting for you to be poisoned. At this point in the battle, there is no need for him to hide it. I see. Su Pifang was stunned when he heard it. Impermanence. It turns out to be impermanence. He murmured the name of the poison like a demon. And tears flowed from his red eyes. It was impermanence who killed you. Su Pifang gritted his teeth and dragged his body to fight again. But at this moment, the giant's spirit was slow and had no strength to break free from the quicksand at his feet. There were 2 more thunders. Hong Fan held a blade in his left hand and cut off the tendons on both sides of Su Pifang's feet. The giant lost his balance and fell on his back. The pale golden sky and the black clouds occupied Su Pifang's scattered vision. There was a slight friction sound from the side, perhaps it was clothes or gravel rubbing against a stone surface, about to deliver a fatal blow. He should have looked over, but he was not interested. Is the journey of the red-faced god over here? Su Pifang thought absent-mindedly. His mind seemed to be clear and turbid, and he didn't know where it was for a moment, so he instinctively looked for the narrow coffin. But when he turned his head and looked beyond the bridge railing, he saw only a hazy scene. It was the twilight that burst out at dusk, and the air was filled with swarms of mist like flying ants. The sound of their wings merged into a buzzing sound. Su Pifang watched and listened, and suddenly felt that the twilight and the buzzing sound turned into a curtain, covering his life. At the end of spring, we have all left the group. He looked at the flying ants and relaxed. 4 years ago, in the same buzzing sound as today, he fell on the ring of the golden magnetic gate. A glance at the red, burst into crazy love. 4 years later, the turbid love that was once chased like a trapped beast finally became clear. This love is not just love. It is torture, it is a disaster, it is a rose that grows from the blood of the wound, it is a butterfly that flies out of the eyes of the skull. Xiao Yuer, this ending is not bad, right? Su Pifang took out the gold chain with his last strength and held it in his palm. Hong Fan, please send me to see her, he smiled and said in a breathy voice, and withdrew from the giant spirit phase. Hong Fan was silent. He stepped forward with a broken Jun and Zhuang in his hand, knelt on one knee beside Su Pifeng, and stabbed him hard. The silver blade pierced his heart. His 5 fingers loosened. The twisted gold chain fell into the quicksand of the same color. At this moment, Hong Fan seemed to hear the sound of a strong wind breaking the clouds. He saw the dazzling golden light rise into the sky like lightning, passing through the clouds and going far to the east. In the spirit platform, a dragon soul fruit quickly appeared. Hong Fan did not draw his sword, but picked up the gold chain. When he stood up again, Xianzhen Bridge had been drowned by the mighty cheers. Along the Io River, in the light of thousands of candles, the voices of people were revealed. Xianjiao, Xianjiao, the shouts were like thunder and wind, roaring into tide, overwhelming the waves of the river. Hong Fan looked at the countless jumping faces, his eyes were dazed, and he didn't know north from south. Yes, I defeated the Xianjiao on the list, he thought in a daze and looked out of the sky. The setting sun was dead. Only the dark clouds gathered, holding the crescent moon. It seemed to be relieved. There is no joy. P.S. The design of Su Pifeng is similar to the mirror of Hong Fan. First, his origin and experience, and then at the same time, he faced the absurd and sudden death of people around him, and was forced to take revenge that was doomed to fail. Su Pifeng did not think he was wrong, and he could not take Ao's Hickson, so he was severely punished, but he also understood that Hong Fan should not bear all the responsibility for the death of his fiancée. The same is true for Hong Fan. He can realize the coincidence behind the assassination of Zhang Yuanzi, and the Ao family is just a pawn in it. But that's all they can do. In the last battle, when the poison of impermanence broke out, I suddenly felt that they reached a mutual understanding. This also echoes the original tiger looking in the mirror. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.